Ice sheets melting at unprecedented rates, decades ahead of scientific projections.
No one is available to take your call. Please leave a message.
Has the whole world gone crazy?
Nah, just your screwy country.
I now call on Paris Agreement, which is in the document that I call on you to adopt this. I see the reaction is positive. There are no objections. The Paris Agreement is accepted.
Well, the world finally agreed to do something about the global climate crisis, and it's like the mother of all 911 calls. But no one's answering it. No one's even talking about it, actually. Not in the mainstream media, all politics and terror. So we're going to talk about it, both the challenges and solutions, the leaders and the losers. We'll cover the extreme events and emerging technologies, all of it at Climate Talk Radio. And we'll build that huge momentum necessary for action to carry out the charge of the Paris Agreement. I'm Nancy Skinner, host of Climate Talk Radio, and I've assembled the best and brightest show contributors from climate scientists, climate champions, business and technology leaders, and yes, even bipartisan political leaders to get this conversation started. Welcome to Climate Talk Radio. And here we go. Yet another episode in Climate Talk Radio. And oh my God, I can't believe this is really happening in our country. Mayhem show. We've renamed it Climate Talk Radio. And oh my God, there's a meltdown going on in our electoral process. I am Nancy Skinner. This is Climate Talk Radio. The number of the program is 734-333-9020. 734-333-9020. Actually, the meltdown of the electoral process via the gift called Donald Trump. I have a theory that we're going to work on here today on the program, and that is that could it be possible, which I've named, could Trump make America all blue and therefore possibly all green as in renewable energy and saving the climate? We will be talking about Nicole, and that's not that would not be just another apprentice member who said that Donald wanted to hit her up during that season. Although there's plenty of that out there to come. It's Hurricane Nicole that was again one of these things we've been talking about. It was a Cat 3. It has now it was heading towards us right after Matthew. It has diminished somewhat again, but we always predict them. Seems like we were ahead on Matthew a week. Nicole fizzled out, but they're still a-coming. But we have some really fascinating guests today, lost in all the news. We barely get any. The only climate question we got in the second debate last night, or on Sunday night, was from a climate denier, a fossil fuel operator who said, "How are you going to save my job?" Basically, Ken Bone in the famous red sweater was the guy. So we're going to try and get Ken Bone on because I heard an interview on Anderson Cooper afterwards, and he said, it's kind of in my economic interest to vote for Donald Trump, given what I do, but he's so dangerous, I don't think I can. And I think so. Ken Bone's voting for Hillary Clinton. But in addition to that, we have some really courageous folks who've been out there on the front lines, not paying attention to the nonsense because there are bigger issues and threats. And Al Gore was on the campaign, thank God, finally in Florida, and talking about climate change and how it is the most important issue for millennials to get out, to get off the fence here, get off the Gary Johnson train, because you don't have that choice, because this is the issue and how every vote counts. So it's so great to see that. We'll talk about that later. And we have other people here that have actually been acting on their convictions because they understand the threat to civilization that it is, as Al Gore openly says on a regular basis. And they've taken action, civil disobedience, in fact. Joining me now to talk about some incredible acts of civil disobedience is shut down the tar sand oil pipelines coming into the United States is Marla Markham. She's the director of the Climate Disobedience Center. And you're out of Arlington, Massachusetts. First of all, thanks for coming on the show, Marla. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Nancy. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so tell us, the whole world's been wrapped up in this election, as you know. So we're trying to get attention to climate change. That's hard enough, let alone all what you're working on, the tar sands pipelines and the Dakota Sioux tribes that are trying to defend their land based on arguments in federal courts, joined by lots of protesters, lots of celebrities. You guys actually went out and shut down the pipelines in 4 states, I understand, and some were arrested for doing that. So tell us the story. How did this get started? What were you able to do, and where does it stand now?
Yeah, thanks. So there were a group of people, I don't even know exactly how long ago because I wasn't involved in the planning, but they started talking about the need to really make a statement by shutting down all of some kind of the worst fuel that they could shut down. And so they started looking to pipelines and trying to figure out what it would take to shut down a pipeline. We know that some Indigenous women in Canada last year had shut down one tar sands pipeline by turning the emergency shutoff valves in one location. So we're sort of inspired by that and did some research. So they went out and they found some former pipeline engineers and safety experts and learned about what it would take to safely shut off flow in a tar sands pipeline. And then they went about finding, where the manual safety valves are, and trying to figure out if they could access them. And so this action has been in the works for quite a while, and it just so happened that the time when they were ready,
they hacked the manual. And found out
they did.
Speaking of all the hacking going on right now,
they did.
You guys hacked the safety manual, the operating manual. Excellent. Okay, go ahead. I'm listening.
Exactly.
So
it just so happened that the timing on this action coincided with a lot of the ramping up of focus on the resistance at Standing Rock, and at the same time that Standing Rock was asking people to do actions in solidarity with them. So this action was already in the works. It was already going to happen, but the folks who took the action were deeply grateful to be able to link the action that they took to the leadership of the Indigenous folks at Standing Rock, and to stand up to protect water and earth and our future with them.
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously that raises more attention to the issue, which it's the oxygen. So little oxygen is given even to a climate. One of our big frustrations here at Climate Talk Radio is that they have not asked a single question during the debate. None of the moderators have asked a question about climate change, not one. And so it's and the policies are so radically different. So this brings attention to it. So you got to the safety valves, and that's sort of in 4 states, as I understand it. So it was Minnesota, was Minnesota, North Dakota, Washington, and
Montana.
Okay, and so you kind of at the same time went in. Did they wear like black ninja suits or anything? Paint a picture for us. It's radio. We paint pictures.
Yeah. Absolutely. So first of all, if your listeners want to see any of it, I'll certainly describe it. They can also go to shutitdown.today. Okay. That's the website, shutitdown.today.
Okay.
And they can click around. But folks will see that they were dressed like construction workers, kind of. They had, reflective construction worker vests. There were hard hats. Their vests did have a big red X across the back, which is part of this group calls itself Climate Direct Action, and the X is part of their logo. So
they could, plus they could identify each other, like when you're on the same team. It's like, yeah. But that's very clever. That sounds like Mission Impossible Tom Cruise stuff. Blend in and just do this.
A little bit, but it turns out that none of these sites are guarded, and they certainly didn't have to do anything
pause at that second.
Dramatic.
But pause at that for a second.
Yeah.
None of these sites are guarded, meaning we're all freaking out about ISIS and all the stuff that could possibly, Donald Trump, all the craziness about what's going on overseas and these lone gunmen who somehow get a hold of all these guns and they're trying, and these tar sand pipelines are like sitting target terrorists. Because if they were, this was one of my big arguments against the Keystone Pipeline, not only, the other obvious ones, that it was a no-brainer for us in terms of the climate, in terms of the cost, in terms of it was a transnational company, but we got nothing out of it, that the eminent domain and ripping up farms and football fields and ranches and why for foreign oil interests. But in addition to that, a pipeline across the country with the dirtiest, these spills, these tar sand oil, we're trying to make sure that people who don't understand climate change understand more. It's so much dirtier than refined petroleum and even, certainly than natural gas. So the contribution to greenhouse gases is enormously higher. And the spills are costlier because they are really hard to clean up. We had a big spill in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Right.
I live in Michigan. The show's out of Michigan. And they're still on the Kalamazoo River. It has not fully been cleaned up. That was almost 6 years ago. So just think about a terrorist who wanted to cause it's billions of dollars. If there was a leak or a major leak, it would be multi-billion-dollar attack just hitting it. So they were not guarded at all.
Right, and so the way that they got in was literally, they had some bolt cutters and they cut padlocks to get into areas that were surrounded by chain link fence, like in the middle of a field.
It kind of is anticlimactic, right? Like, oh my God, we've got this whole operation, and it's like, okay, I guess this is not going to be quite as hard as we thought. We got some bolt cutters. Yep, okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so one thing that it's really important to us, I mentioned this already, but it's really important to us for people to understand some of the criticism, even from people on our own side, people who should be our allies. We've gotten a lot of knee-jerk criticism about how we could have caused a spill ourselves by turning these valves. So I'd like to take an opportunity to just say exactly what the folks did, in addition to talking to the safety experts. So these are manual safety shutoff valves. They're there as a safety measure. So that's one of the reasons why they're accessible, is because in case there is a spill somewhere in between shutoff valves, somebody can come and access them manually. The companies are supposed to be able to turn the valves remotely from their operation centers. And in fact, we believe that all of the pipelines were actually turned off manually from those remote centers, because all of our activists at each site called the company. They were on the site. They called the company at least 15 minutes before they were going to turn the valves to give them the heads up, to tell them what they were doing and that they were going to do it and where exactly they were, and to say 15 minutes from now, I'm going to turn the safety valve to shut off the pipeline. And we are hearing from journalists who have been following up the story with those companies. The companies haven't told us this directly, but we're hearing from journalists, one from the AP, for example, Matt Voles in Helena, Montana, heard from Spectra Energy that they got that phone call and were told it was 20 minutes in advance, and they went ahead and shut the pipeline off themselves. And so then when Leonard Higgins entered the pipeline shutoff valve area and turned the valve himself, the company had in fact, he didn't know it at the time, already shut off the pipeline. And so this is, and our folks, because we know that a lot of these sites are remote, and it's we wanted to make sure that our folks on the ground could get that message through. The remote support team, in a couple of cases, also made phone calls to the companies just to make sure that they got the message in case there wasn't enough cell service for the activists to get their calls through.
So you actually basically got them to shut it down themselves by calling them, and then went in. And
it was kind of amazing.
Well,
yeah, and then the most remote people, one of the groups sat and waited for 90 minutes for the police to show up. So the other thing is, this isn't monkey wrenching, and it's not sabotage. We shut down these pipelines safely, and then the people who actually did it sat and waited for the police to come.
And were arrested.
And arrest them, yes.
What do they charge them with?
I don't have all of the information on the charges, but I do have some information on the bail amounts, which is a little dramatic. So
wait a minute. How much bail do they put on you for making a call warning a company that you're about to do something completely harmless? How
I don't know. Well, you're about to hear how much bail they put on these people. So Annette in Minnesota, her bail is set at $10,000. For some reason, Emily, who was with Annette in Minnesota and also took the action, her bail is set at $5,000. We're not sure about the differences. We don't know about the bail amounts in North Dakota yet. Those people haven't been to see a judge yet. Leonard in Montana's bail is set at $50,000. Wow. His attorney is trying to get that reduced. Yep. Reed, who was on the support team in Montana and was arrested. He wasn't trespassing. He wasn't inside the enclosure. He was there to support Leonard, and he was arrested later at his hotel room. We don't know what the bail amount is for him. Ken Ward he was arrested in Anacortes, Washington. His bail is set at $75,000. And his documentarian who was with him, a documentary filmmaker, Lindsay Grazel, she was also arrested there, although she was not trespassing, and her bail is set at $25,000. And the other support person there also bail set at $25,000, and he also was not trespassing or taking an action.
Have you set up a GoFundMe site so that people can help with bail for these folks who are making this statement?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead and
tell
us what that is.
The site is, it's absolutely, it's shutitdown.today/donate.
Okay, so you can go to shutitdown.today/donate to help with the bail costs of these folks. And so really, you did it for a reason, because there's been so little attention paid to it. The people that did this obviously were willing to go to jail and undergo this. Are they working in the field of climate change? Do they just have an understanding about the climate emergency we face and we're trying to make a statement? Did it have anything to do with the election and waking people up about this? Or, what drove these individual actors?
Yeah, well, so all of them are a little bit different, but for each of them, they've come to a point in their lives. So I think Ken and Emily maybe are the only ones who you could call sort of climate organizers, and neither one of them really for pay. But they've all come to a point in their lives where they recognize that all of the reasonable legal alternatives for trying to fight the dramatic build-out of fossil fuel infrastructure, things that we're told are reasonable and legal are really just like the legal route that are not reasonable at all, because it's not reasonable to imagine that we're going to block any of this infrastructure from being constructed with the processes that are available to us. So the Federal Energy Regulatory Permitting process is is a sham. It's a rubber stamp sort of institution, and so we know that we've tried. All of these people have tried for years and years and years, in one way or another, to influence the political system, to influence the regulatory system, to, they've been interveners on certain projects, they've written letters, they've gone to testify at hearings, and again and again and again, the regulators listen or pretend to listen, and then continue as the companies had originally planned.
Right.
And they just rubber stamp these permits. And so we recognize that a lot of people understand the situation we're in with climate, and are perhaps feeling some despair because they've engaged the same system that you could spend all your time making comments and protesting on the sidewalk, and we're not able to make change because the system is rigged against us. And so we believe that as more and more of us step outside of the system and just say, no, business as usual is over for the fossil fuel industry, we're not going to stand for it anymore. The power we have that they don't have is our bodies and our spirits and our willingness to make ourselves vulnerable voluntarily to these consequences.
Well, and our wallets,
and
a lot
we owe it to the future.
And a lot of people have spoken out and caused the financial disinvestment campaigns that are going on that got the Rockefeller funds to disinvest. Universities that have disinvested wholesale. I believe it was which one of the churches? An entire church.
The United Church of Christ.
Yeah, maybe there's a couple of them, massive disinvestment campaigns.
Yep.
So those are all kind of going on. I will say that some interesting stuff came out. We're going to talk about later in the program about the political press. I understand your frustration. I've been working on climate change for 22 years, and I've run for Congress 3 times on the issue of climate change. Okay. I lost in 2004 in a U.S. Democratic primary for the U.S. Senate against a guy who was running on health care that no one ever heard of named Barack Obama. So right. I've been at it a while, a lot longer than you. You're much younger, I can tell by listening. But here's a memo that came out by WikiLeaks. So this is sort of interesting because, Russia depends on oil for that's their lifeblood. They're hacking into our systems and affecting the election. And they leaked some selective emails released just over the weekend from Hillary Clinton's campaign. Her chairman is John Podesta, who was Barack Obama's senior advisor on climate, which he's great on it. He's been trying to do what he can, but he just has had a hostile Congress. And so he's done so much internally that I could tell you about because I know the people that are running it. But in this email, and I think you need to spread this to your folks as well, the emails that were leaked internally were Hillary trying to push her campaign further than they really wanted her to go in terms of raising royalties to a point where it didn't make sense for the oil companies to drill on lands they had already leased, and then stopping all leasing of, ending it. And she said this at the very beginning of the campaign, and they were like, whoa, we've got some Western states where that's going to play and it'd be an issue. And then they came back and said, it sounds like she's made up her mind on this. We're going to have to just make peace with her position on this. And so they were figuring out how she was going to say she was against Keystone and whatnot, because she had to stand by the president, the president's process, which I always knew John Kerry was going to come out and say no. I campaigned with him during my 2006 race. He's so good on climate change. I knew he would say no, but they had to kind of go through the process, and she wanted to say much earlier, but couldn't because it was going through a process. So she decided she was going to write an op-ed very early on, and they thought it would. I forget what the reason was, but she just said it during a press conference. But if you go back into the emails that the Russians leaked, because I think honestly the Russians are trying to get Trump elected because he's an oil guy. Trump, on the other hand, wants to lift all the restrictions on drilling everywhere. He just wants all natural, protected forests, all natural lands, protected wetlands, everything, offshore drilling, all restrictions on drilling will be lifted. And she apparently had been, trying to go the other route much earlier than we all knew about in terms of raising the royalties on these leases, so it didn't make economic sense for them to drill anymore, and other means. And her campaign was being political, but or some lower staffers. And then they said, "Hey, we just got to make peace." I think she's made up her mind on this one. And she did come out against the pipeline, and she is. So in terms of your group, and I completely support civil disobedience, and the safety measures you took. Obviously, I would never advocate anyone being harmed or hurt or, environmental destruction. And you did it well. But I want you also to understand this choice that sitting out and just doing that and not voting for a candidate whose positions are far superior, that's also reckless. We need to confront this at every angle we can, politically, socially, through protests, through civil disobedience, through financial disinvestment, through new technologies, through all kinds of advancement and world cooperation, the Paris Agreement. I'm for all of the above, and that does not mean natural gas. But anyways, I just wanted to get that in there because we're going to talk about that. I don't know. Sometimes I don't get to tell people that, but that's out there that. That she really has been on your side much longer than you knew about it. But so great, so interesting. One more time, the website is shutitdown.today. .today. You can see what they did. These brave individuals. You can help chip in a few bucks for their bail, folks, because they made a statement about this, and it will get coverage, and people will learn just that oil has to stay in the ground. It cannot be produced. Any money spent to produce that should absolutely be spent on the transition to a clean energy, renewable economy. Without a doubt, the time and the math don't work up. So, Marla Markham, we very much appreciate your time and please give our best to the sleuths who accomplished it, and say that there are journalists who are behind them and think they did a good job.
Thank you. I will. Thanks, Nancy.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there you have it. Pretty cool stuff. Hey, Nance?
Yeah, I think it might be the makings of a Tom Cruise movie, or maybe somebody else. It could be interesting.
And I was thinking, were they in black and or whatever, or camouflage? No, they were.
No, I saw them.
They were dressed like what's the YMCA construction workers. With an X on their hat.
They had an orange vest.
And all they needed was
they wore orange.
And all they needed was a bolt cutter, and to shut down a safety valve and close off all the tar sands coming in to the northern border. We talk about terror crossing the border. Tar sand oil coming from the Canadian border is far more terror than a few Mexicans who are getting over the Rio Grande, because the Mexicans that get over the Rio Grande aren't going to destroy all of humanity, and tar sands will if it is developed. So the Coalition for Civil Disobedience, the Center for Disobedience, that is Shut It Down today, and then coming up actually. So this is getting more and more attention. 5,000 people were in Houston today. Areas and communities affected all across the United States by oil and gas that is invading their communities, polluting their water, contributing to climate change. They have a day of prayer vigil today in Texas. We're going to talk about that. And oh boy, do I have a lot of good stuff prepared for you today. This is a show you do not want to miss, because the election, that's my premises, I think. Nate Silver says in 538 that if women refused to vote for Trump, he drew out the map, and it was solid blue, every single state. So, okay, wait a minute. Maybe it's actually Trump who turns the country blue, all blue, which means an easy sweep for us to get some decent climate policies passed. White House, Senate, House, all in play now, because Donald just demands on being Donald. He's unshackled now. We'll talk. What the heck does unshackled mean? What have we seen up to this date? Lots more on that. 734-333 is the number to the program. This is Climate Talk Radio. Okay, here we go. As we continue on Climate Talk Radio, let's refresh your Climate Talk Radio /live shows. Live shows daily, 3 to 6 usually when we can. No, had a couple of minor incidents with family members being sick, but we're back on today. The number 734-333-9020, 333-9020, 734 area code. Okay, so gosh, I've got such an interesting theory, as I always do. I think my theories are interesting, but this is pretty. I have a track history of predicting things like the Asian financial crisis back in 1996, 7, 8, the 2008 financial crisis. I was on Fox News with Cavuto all the time, predicting that was going to happen. But so. When you get to a point when Donald Trump went unhinged, and I do have that tape because we didn't get to enjoy it on our last program, but when you have a situation like this where CNN is reporting that, well, okay, there's two things with reports here. What I want to go through, okay, well, that there's collusion between Putin and Trump on hacking elections. If you go to the CNN.com and you see this look on Obama's face with Putin, he is not happy at all. And you have a situation where Hillary Clinton is tied in Utah. Utah is the reddest of red states. Okay, it doesn't get any redder than Utah. And a poll out now shows her tied there. I'm trying to play that cut for you, which is a sort of an amazing thing that she would find herself tied in a poll. But anyway, so she's tied. That means that Russia's trying to do everything that they can to intervene in this election because, and we actually have followed this story closely with Michael Isikoff, who did a story, who worked for NBC News for years. He's now with Yahoo, investigative reporter, about a guy on his campaign named Carter Page, and he's a named advisor of Donald Trump. And he is an investor and owner of Gazprom, which is Russia's state-owned oil company. Russia derives most of its GDP from oil. And Donald Trump obviously said he would increase oil, and climate change is a hoax. So they have an interest because the rest of the world obviously agreed to act on climate change in Paris in 2015, and they are making good on it was finally ratified. There was 55 nations ratified it through their parliament, signed it, including the United States, China, and India. So that's the United States and China alone are 40%. The EU put us over the limit. It goes into effect. This is an agreement that is now the compulsory elements will go into effect. And we have to, be planning. States, the Clean Power Plan was heard at the Circuit Court of D.C., and there will be a ruling on that shortly, which will stand if the Supreme Court is still tied. So the stakes for climate change and the oil industry behind the scenes of all this tawdry stuff and sex tapes and, Billy Bush getting fired and everything that everyone's focused on is such a larger battle going on. And I believe that Donald Trump, because of his and ABC News, and I'll play that as well, did a major investigation into how much Donald Trump personally makes hundreds of millions of dollars in Russia. And this was ABC News. So now climate change hasn't been discussed much. Now it's not like, okay, they're just ignoring us. Boo-hoo-hoo. There's a reason. And we got to get to it. But I think the hacking of emails that has happened, a steady drumbeat release. They started out with, some staffer called Chelsea Clinton a spoiled brat. Oh my God. Terrifying leak, isn't it? And now we're getting a little more interesting, as I just mentioned to our last guest, that Hillary Clinton wanted a much more aggressive campaign on restricting oil increases in pipelines and whatnot in the United States. And now we know that this hacking has come out. So let's listen to what they are. This is the Department of Justice has said, Yes, they have hacked. WikiLeaks is releasing this information. They are trying to interfere in a U.S. election. It's unheard of. They actively have hacked into Florida, a key state's voting database, and the president has promised proportionate action against Russia. What that is, people don't know, but we know they are hacking into our political system. Okay, we're not a cut. This apparently is not coming through. I'll fix that. It's playing in my ear, but it's not coming through your system. I can understand. So, I mean, put two and two together here. All of a sudden, Paul Ryan cuts Donald Trump loose over the weekend. Says he will not defend him, and that he's really worried about defending his majority in the House. That's his job as Speaker of the House. And Senate likewise. The RNC chairman, Reince Priebus, has said he's sticking with Trump. But as we've talked with other officials, to what extent we don't know. Where's the money? It's like, show me the money. That's usually how that goes, and they might not be showing the money. So here, let me see if I think I got it. Let's get this. Apparently not playing that cut. All right. Donald Trump's slip in the polls has GOP worried about Congress. They are really worried about a total wipeout at this point. Starting with, obviously he had problems to begin with and was behind in the polls. After the first debate was a debacle. And then the release of his tax returns, or the release of authenticated copies of his tax returns, 3 pages, that showed, and his accountant verified, that he took $1 billion loss, and then didn't pay taxes for 20 years. That started, I think, the crumbling of the Trump campaign. Where do you even say it started, Nancy? What point do we say it started?
I'm sorry, I was listening to something. I didn't hear your question.
You're not listening to me?
We have another interview coming up.
Oh, okay.
Well, we have a 3-minute. They're coming on in 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see here. Let me get you. So, all right, here's Warren Buffett saying, I'll show my taxes. I show mine if you show yours.
Last night that Mr. Buffett statement from. We now have a statement from Warren Buffett responding to the claim by Donald Trump last night that Mr. Buffett had taken a, quote, massive deduction and massive charge, just like Donald Trump had, referring to Donald Trump's $916 million loss carry forward that allowed him to go for a certain period of time without income taxes. What Mr. Buffett is saying today is that his 2015 return shows adjusted gross income of about $11.6 million. His deductions only totaled $5.5 million, of which the allowable charitable deductions were around 3.5. Now, the total charitable contributions that Mr. Buffett made in that year were around $2.85 billion, and he said most of that deduction was not taken because it's not allowed. There's a cap on charitable deductions. So in short, we have $11.6 million in income, deducting about $5.5 million, with his total taxes paid that year of $1.85 million. Now, he says, this is very important, I have paid federal income tax every year since 1944 when I was 13 years old. Though being a slow starter, I owed only $7 in that year. Now, he says he has copies of all 72 of his returns. None of them has he ever used a loss carry forward like Mr. Trump used. Now, he said, finally, I have been audited by the IRS, and I am currently being audited, but I have no problem releasing my tax information while under audit, and neither should Mr. Trump. So Mr. Buffett responding here with some own details of his own taxes, saying he's never used a loss carry forward like that, and he doesn't even take the full deduction on his giant charitable gifts because he can't by law. Guys, back to you.
Okay, so that's where I think it really started to collapse. That happened before the first debate, and Warren Buffett did put out, there's an article that he put out. He has all 72 of his returns that he's had in his lifetime, and in all those years, he's never done what Donald Trump has done, this loss carry forward, because he's a good businessman. He didn't lose $1 billion in any year. But he's never he's never needed to, because he's never been such a loser that he had to carry forward a loss. And in fact, his tax returns for 2015 showed he had, he took the deductions he could, $5 million, and then almost $3.5 million of it went to charity. Because there is a limit on charity. You can't just give it all away to charity so that there's nothing for the federal government. There is a maximum limit. His was his max was $3,469,000 to charity. Okay, so Donald Trump has said he's given tens of millions of dollars, but he will not produce his tax returns. So we do not know that. And in fact, it was the Washington Post that did an extensive look at the Trump Foundation, which has now been shut down by the New Jersey's Attorney General Office for cease and desist because they are not operating properly. And the report said that they were not giving the amounts that they said they were to these groups too. So and that the kids themselves personally were all making tons and tons of money. They were getting money from the foundation using other people's money. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and Chelsea, by contrast, were not getting a single cent from the Clinton Foundation, which does great work all over the planet, including one of their top priorities being climate change. So that's where it started. We're going to continue with the downhill slide and why this may end up being something that God is giving us as a gift for the planet. Perhaps when he becomes such a disaster that we take back all three houses. And hey, if you're a Republican and you're going to vote with us, we're for you, like we are Bob Inglis, who's a contributor to this show. It's not about your party; it's about your policy and your position. Okay, but joining us to talk, as we promised earlier, about the indigenous communities and talked a little bit about the ongoing protests up in North Dakota with in solidarity with the Standing Rock Sioux tribe there. Today, they had 5,000 people representing over 280 indigenous nations and tribes from the Texas Environmental Justice and Advocacy Services to actually go to Houston, Texas, and they did a prayer vigil. And it was not just for tribes. It's all the communities affected personally by the intrusion of energy into their communities, whether it's polluting their water, ripping up their lands, whether it's natural gas, oil, tar sand oil. Communities across the board, like we saw, individual activists are taking this matters into their own hands and getting together and getting their voices heard. So joining us to talk about that is Yvette Arello, and she is a research fellow and grassroots organizer for the Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services. She joins us now. Thanks, Yvette, for joining the program.
Thank you for having us. I'm actually here with Eddie with Carrizo Come Crudo tribe, who is here at the action, the solidarity action against the Dakota Access Pipeline and the Trans-Pecos Pipeline. So Eddie is here with us from West Texas.
Wonderful. Explain for our listeners who haven't, because in our last segment we were talking about the protesters who actually shut down the tar sands pipelines in 4 different states and were arrested. I don't know if you're aware of that action. A group called Shut It Down .today. They actually just went in. They were emergency shut-off valves, so it was a safe operation. And there was no protection. They just went in dressed as construction workers, called the companies and told them they were going to do it, got arrested, and took action. And, of course, they are saying that they were planning on this, but they were happy to support the Sioux tribes who have been trying to speak out for a long time about the invasion in their line. So, Eddie Garcia, thank you for joining us as well. Why don't you tell us what it is that, because so many people are just paying attention to the silliest election on earth. How did all this start, and and then what did you do today? So you are. Is it starting with the North Dakota pipeline that you're trying to block the access on? Is that where it started, and then you involved other communities?
Well, no, it's just much more than that, and it involves everybody that's living here on Earth right now, because it's more than the pipelines, and it's more than the pipelines going through tribal territories and digging up our ancestors' graves and destroying our sacred sites and polluting. It's about that they're polluting the Earth. For everybody. So it's everybody's best interest to get involved on whatever way that you can, because these pipelines are just a symptom of a much bigger problem of people just destroying the earth through wars and through extraction from the earth. So we're pushing also for immediate divestment and stopping funding from the government to extraction industries and moving those monies and more monies to renewables and what do you call it? Renewables and things, sustainable.
Sustainable development
practices in all areas of life. Yeah, sustainable energy, transportation, construction, all areas of life to be sustainable, because we see what's happening with the climate change. It's speeding up climate change, and it's making it uninhabitable for any human beings in the next 10 to 20 years.
The number of the program, 734-333-9020. And so you had a prayer vigil where you had something like 5,000 people who do get it. You said that everyone lives on the planet Earth. I actually can't agree with that. I think some people live in a reality that I would not call on planet Earth, like Donald Trump, who wants to...
Well, exactly. They watch a little bit too much TV, a little bit too much corporate TV and media and news that's not telling the truth, that's not getting the information out to everybody on all the water, clean fresh waters that are being contaminated daily around the country, the leaks, the oil pipelines, the chemical facilities, the gas pipelines that are leaking every day around the country, around the world, and they're contaminating every piece of land and every piece of every river and fresh water supply, along with the air that we breathe.
So Eddie, this is kind of
we see the death.
One of the things that I'm hearing from you is how widespread all this is, but I also do know that sometimes it's important to narrow in on something so people can understand it. Yes. Because if you start to talk about, and it's tough for me, it's Climate Talk Radio, right? So climate change is a massive topic that has so many tentacles, it's just unreal. But that's why it's people then their eyes glaze over and it's hard to comprehend. They can fall into despair. You can't, all of a sudden you've lost them on when we start to talk about every waterway is contaminated. What are the most, let's talk about what's going on in North Dakota and the
North Dakota, there are
the situation, because there is an injunction, right?
About 5. Well, I think they lifted that injunction, if I understand correctly, and so they're going forward and building that pipeline. And so the people of Standing Rock, from what I've seen, are calling out nation and internationally wide. They're calling out for able-bodied people that are trained in nonviolent civil disobedience and have a tremendous amount of discipline to be there for month-long actions, to extremely work hard. They don't want anybody there that's ill in any way, shape, or form that's going to be a burden on the camp. There's 5,000 people at that encampment to stop that pipeline, and they're doing everything within their physical bodies to be able to stop that pipeline from going under the Missouri River, which it's more than 17 million people that it will affect their drinking water. It would contaminate the Missouri and the Mississippi, which is connected to the Missouri downriver. So that's everybody in the middle of America basically would be affected. Their drinking water would be affected.
See, I don't think that they understand that. And I was involved in helping relocate flooded towns after the Great Midwestern Floods of 1993, in which both the Missouri and Mississippi rivers flooded. And so it's not only just the drinking water along that way, but when these floods, which are now much more frequent as a result of climate change, happen and you have contaminated water, it's just not flooding. That the tar sand oil forever ruins that property. So, I mean, you can't clean these types of oil spills. I live in Michigan. Kalamazoo River was contaminated with tar sands by Enbridge. Still there, 6 years later. Let me ask you another question. If you guys have your eyes on this particular situation, because also it's I think underreported nationally, even in Michigan. But Enbridge, that company, Enbridge, a big energy company, they built 2 pipelines underneath Lake Michigan. It's right underneath the Straits of Mackinac, which is a beautiful, pristine area there. Michigan is surrounded by 21% of all of the fresh water on the planet, okay? We have all the Great Lakes. And these pipelines were laid in 1958, and there were divers from the Great Lakes Wildlife Federation that went down there and with video cameras documented where there were structural problems, leaks, defects. Their supports had, supports for the pipeline underwater had fallen, so there was no support for these pipelines. And with a simple permit by our governor, they had been putting 2 million gallons a day through these pipelines. Then they switched to tar sands oil. Those pipelines were not built for tar sands oil because it has more viscosity. It's thicker. It's junkier. And so the Great Lakes Commission has said, you've got to replace or remove these immediately. The company's refusing. The governor's not doing anything. The attorney general's not doing anything. The University of Michigan did a study on the environmental impact. If these, 1958, that's when they were built. If these broke and you contaminated the Great Lakes, which we're surrounded with 7 states that are members of the Great Lakes Federation because they touch 7 states. Michigan happens to be, we're the only one that we touch every Great Lake. Imagine that. Imagine that 21% of the fresh water on the entire planet becomes contaminated from these pipelines. To me, it seems so outrageous that Enbridge, Bill McKibben, I know, he went up there and did a rally, but it's just rallies, and it doesn't get the news coverage. And once it goes, it's too late. This is a disaster. This is like the Gulf BP explosion. But now we know it's going to happen. We know that this is going to happen, and it's just so difficult to get any action. Have your groups? I
think one of the things is, besides the direct actions that they are doing and putting their bodies on the line, their lives on the line there with the peaceful, nonviolent, direct civil disobedience, there's people that can't make it out there that for whatever reasons, you can contribute to Standing Rock Reservation. You can contribute here in Texas to CarizoComecrudoNation.com on our website. And you can make calls. You can make calls and emails all the time.
Say what your website is again, because I want to make sure people hear it.
CarizoComecrudo Nation.com, all one word.
And tell me about the situation. Tell me about your situation down there in Texas. What are you facing?
Right now we have 2 pipelines. One of them is being built by the same company, Energy Transfer Partnerships, that is doing the pipeline, the Dakota Access Pipeline through Iowa, North Dakota, and a couple other states up there. And it's the same company, and they're building a gas pipeline down here that is going through our traditional tribal land. It's tearing up our ancestral burial sites. It's tearing up they just destroyed a 5,000-year-old archaeological site of ours, sacred site, and just 2 weeks ago. And they're planning on going under the Rio Grande River at where it's currently the border with Mexico. And once that's contaminated too, that's another several million people that their water and their livelihoods, their farming, and all that will be destroyed. And they are contaminated already with another company that's building the North American Coal. They are building. They're already extracting a strip coal mine down there that's contaminating the river already. And we're trying to stop that too.
And it's interesting.
So what we need people to do is call.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, people can call every day, all day long, especially if you're at home, and you can do something constructive for your children or future generations, is to call the White House, call the DNC, the RNC, the Hillary and Trump campaigns, and any congressional representatives, and just call and harass them to and let them know that you want sustainability now. You want them to stop funding the extraction and everything that's destroying the earth, and you want them to start funding things that are going to be livable and sustainable for all human beings living here in the United States and everywhere else.
I would go a step further and say to go ahead and make calls to Congress people who still haven't made a decision on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, because if the Trans-Pacific Partnership goes through, then all of the decisions are outside of the community's hands. They then become only an opinion and only the option for these international companies that are going to come in and continue the extraction methods, and we'll have no way to fight them back, because the only courts that they'll listen to will be the tribal courts that the TPP will put in place. We have to close the natural gas loophole in the Clean Power Plan, which is also coming up, so that we don't see natural gas as a transitional fuel into renewables. It is low-hanging fruit. All of those studies were conducted between the EPA and the Gas Research Institute. The other policy group that was giving them information has updated their information to say that that natural gas is 86 times worse, not only 23 times worse. So
because of the methane that is produced in in the production process. There's much more methane, which is 60 times more dangerous a greenhouse gas when you are trying to extract natural gas. Plus, you contaminate the water supplies. Some up to 30,000 gallons per each well that is fracked. That water has about 1,000 chemicals that we can't know because Dick Cheney passed a law, but it permanently removes that water from the hydrological cycle. So, we're from Michigan, and lived through the Flint horror, where our government purposefully, those individuals are being charged now, prosecuted for their role in actually changing the water sample supplies data. They're actually, finally, they're getting prosecuted. But look at what happened to Flint, Michigan. And it was at my back doorstep. I covered Rachel Maddow's town hall there. That was the government doing it directly to the people with knowledge. What's happening in your locations and locations across the country, in Texas and in North Dakota, is that these companies are being allowed to do this, and government is allowing them to do it. So it's a step removed from Flint, where the government literally knowingly contaminated the water supplies of 1 million people. This is just allowing them to do that. And I think, so I would add to both of you, I'm so glad to see that you're out there and you're speaking. I actually studied, I'm a big fan many years, and studied Native American spirituality and the closeness of Mother Earth, and that it is part of it's part of your way of life and religion, and so I respect that you're bringing that up to the fore. But I would also say you've got to get every single person that's involved in this to vote, because the rest of my show is dedicated to the fact that we have a rare possibility, given all the forces that big oil's funded most of this, right? The political process. But Donald Trump is such a disaster right now that all the political experts are saying there is a chance that we could take the White House and the Senate and the House of Representatives. That's all three branches. And I know for a fact that if that does happen, there will be a price on carbon, there will be a rapid transition. Al Gore was out yesterday and with Hillary Clinton talking about a rapid transition toward renewable energy and sustainability, that her campaign, John Podesta, was Barack Obama's senior advisor on climate change, that this decision, if Trump turns out to be a blessing in disguise, because he's such a disaster, and he's working with the Russians who love oil. I mean, that's their lifeblood, and they're hacking our election to try and get him in. So every vote, every person, if you want to do one thing, speak up and protest. But if you don't vote, if you do not have everybody who can vote or drive them to the polls or start early voting wherever state you're in, then you are not helping. You are not helping protect your people. Your voices your voices are not heard. Your votes need to be counted, is what I'm saying. Okay, so please ensure that all your activists. Sometimes activists say, I'm disgusted with the political process. I'm just going to be an activist. I say to them that you can't do that. You can't have it both ways. You need to do both. It's an all above. Right? So vote, get out there, protest, pray. All of the above, and I don't mean natural gas when I use that phrase. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eddie.
I totally agree, and I totally agree. And it's not just the presidential elections, but there's congressional. A lot of Congress is up for election right now. That's what I'm talking about. Calling right now before those elections to tell them to take a stand on certain issues that you want them to take a stand on right now before those elections. Put the pressure on them. And also read up on who you're voting for on the local level, too. There's all kinds of things that happen on the local level, and especially your congressional rep and your senators.
And we also have to push the Hillary camp to not support the Trans-Pacific Partnership because, we have to look in both directions.
Well, she opposes it now.
There are Democrats there.
She does oppose it now, and I mentioned this to my last guest. Well, I'm sure we'll hear more about this. The Russians have hacked into her emails and leaked some campaign emails that they think will be damaging to her, of course. But I thought they were very interesting and telling because in the emails they leaked today was her internal campaign. She actually asked right off the bat to start raising she wanted to raise the royalties to a point where it didn't make any financial sense for oil companies that had already leased land to drill. And she also wants to stop the drilling, and her staffers were pushing back on her, saying, we might offend a lot of Western states and blah, 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 blah. And then they come back to a later date, and they come back and say, I think we're going to have to make peace with her. She's made up her mind on this issue. So I know she mentioned natural gas as a bridge. I didn't like that. But I think that sometimes, there's because I run for Congress on climate change 3 times. So there's messaging that you can say and whatnot. But what we're seeing hacked is that Hillary has a much more aggressive, and I think they want that to be seen to scare the people who think that, she's the people that do work in fossil fuel industries. That guy who had the red sweater on at the second debate, remember him, Ken Bone? He was operating. Right. That's what his only question on climate change that we've gotten so far in the presidential debate was from this dude named Ken Bone wearing the goofy red sweater because his suit broke, and he operates a fossil fuel plant in Ohio, and he was saying, how can I keep my job and protect the environment? Because I'm not saying some people, I understand financial insecurity, but we're going to have a whole new industry of technologies, but he was the only one who got it in, and she changed the subject to, she did mention natural gas, but she changed it to climate change. She got Al Gore on the trail. I'm a climate reality leader. I was trained personally by Al Gore to give his presentation. So trust me.
Climate reality was here in Houston not too long ago.
Where they're a fantastic group. Everybody should get trained and be a climate reality leader. That's why I started my show. This is what I've done is media. So we all take our talents and do what we can, and you guys are doing a heck of a great job to put your bodies and your mouths and your prayers out there, and I'm glad to raise awareness of it. So last time we have you Yvette Arellano. I can't pronounce Ariana and Eddie Garcia, and put your website out there again if folks want to hear more about it. What's the name of it? The group.
Carrizo Come Crudo Nation.com. So it's CARRIZO COMECRUDO Nation, all one word, .com.
And for the environmental justice communities and intersectionality issues, TexasBarrios.org, Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services. That's their website.
Gracias yo hablo español un poquito. Not like Tim Kaine.
That's our second language.
Right.
That's our second language, and English is our third. Our first is a Hokum language. It's one of the oldest languages in North America.
And for us, it's Nahuatl.
For your tribe, yeah. Well, you are doing the Mother Earth your ancestors, who we know and I know from my study, are looking down and helping you in your quest.
We can feel it. We felt it today.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. I read all about Black Hawk and North Dakota, and I even had the opportunity to meet with him once. So I appreciate everything you're doing today, and come back and tell us. Keep us informed as things progress. Okay, as we head towards this, because we're just beginning. We've only just begun. We have a lot of work to do. Thank you so much, Yvette. And
thank you for uplifting the stories.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Eddie.
Thank you, and it's really important to make those calls right now. Make those calls.
Absolutely. Register, call, vote, all of it today.
They are our public servants. They're not our dictators.
That's right.
And you know what? They listen to that. Right now, everybody's actually, I'll just say this last thing. Right now, because what's going on politically, everybody's deciding whether to stick with Trump or not. And I talked to a pollster yesterday, and it's basically like they're polling their constituents, and they want to know, like, are you with them? Are you not? And so your calls right now saying you want to protect the environment, you don't like his position on climate, you don't want those calls are meaningful, because all these congressional people are and state legislatures, they're all running their campaigns right now, trying to get reelected, and they're worried about Trump's positions on these issues. So this time is even more important.
Yeah, you don't want the sexism, the racism, the homophobia, and all those other bad things.
Yeah, and we got to uplift and go ahead and fix the Voting Rights Act, because at least in Houston, we have undetermined district voting lines, and that's been going on for the past 3 election cycles. We just got word back on September 27th that they did violate and disenfranchise minority groups.
We've got a lot of work to do. We got Citizens United to overturn, and that's why it's possibly Donald Trump could be a gift to humanity in some. It could be a prayer from the ancestors, because if they do take if Democrats, I'm just going to say this: if they take all 3 houses, and I'm not saying they're all perfect, because you have southern state senators and whatnot that represent oil. I'm not saying, but we have a much better chance of turning the ship, this huge freight headed towards that iceberg, around, if they're all on board and it's not just one big fight, just a deadlock as it's been. They could work together and turn around our energy policies in a way that protects all of us. So, vote. Thank you so much again. We'll keep you
Thank you.
Updated.
Thank you. Thank everybody out there.
Great.
Doing something good.
Okay.
Great. I think everyone is just so stressed out. We want this to be over, and we want the movie to end. I feel like I'm in a horror film, and I'm stressed out. And we all have our personal lives and the stress that goes on in that. But then to think about the outcome of an election that's going to impact really the survival of our planet, and no one's talking about it because they're talking about all this other stuff. But that, in an ironic way, all the lewd locker room talk, which, by the way, I've sound from athletes who are really mad that they're saying that, NFL players saying, we don't say that stuff. And there's women fighting back. There's a movement called hashtag Pussies Grab Back that are reaching out and have women telling stories about this doesn't really happen every 14 seconds about how they've been groped and grabbed. But all this stuff, somehow, all this tawdriness might just cause, and now Donald Trump saying he's unshackled, cause this candidate to be the most important thing that ever happened to people who really care, because they might just get so wiped out that we can actually have a Congress, and then of course that would spill over into state elections too as well, and some justice in state legislatures that in Michigan, which is terrible, our environmental policies, that could end up allowing us to put together some great climate policies that produce new jobs, economic growth, and Trump redistricting overturns Citizens United. all these things that have stood in our way for so long and seem so insurmountable. And we kind of have a chance maybe to do that. We're going to continue here on Climate Talk Radio. I am Nancy Skinner. The number to the program, 734-333-9020. I got a lot of material about what's going on. If you missed it, I got it. Okay, here we go. As we continue on Climate Talk Radio, I'm Nancy Skinner. 734-333. Joined by, when you dial that number, I see you call. I see that you're listening. I programs people, but you got to pick up the phone and call. 734-333-9020 is the number. And you will hear the lovely Miss Nancy on the other end of the line, the other Nancy, who answers the phone and talks to you,
yes.
My producer.
Too bad they can't see me. I'm so lovely.
You are lovely.
But this is radio,
no,
so.
Yeah, no, that's.
No, but I'm having a bad hair day.
That's the beauty of radio.
I'm glad I'm on radio.
You don't have to dress up, but we're going to soon be on television. So I was just saying today, because this is all new technology that we're using, this program, and for me to sometimes like load cuts, it's not the way we used to do it in radio. It's difficult. It's not quite working how it's supposed to, so it's a little more difficult to do this. Once we get our act together and all the stuff works as smoothly as it's supposed to work, then we're going to be having a video stream. And so then we have to have good hair days every day.
Oh, no. Not on me, only on you.
I think we should get a camera on you, actually, and we'll switch it.
God.
We'll switch the stream so that, it's more than people just want to look at me. Although it is fascinating if you're watching me, because you to see how much I have to do. I'm pulling things off the printer. I'm pulling up music. I have 5 computers around me doing different things, Googling. I have my phone and I'm texting, getting text from people and you. So it's like, it's really good TV to see, actually. Depending on if I have my glasses on or not, glass of water, coffee, all those things are very interesting to see. And you will be able to see it soon. You need to subscribe to the website to get any information, especially about when we have really good guests coming up. We're going to be sending out emails you could sign up at another place too. Spreaker.com is our hosting platform, Spreaker.com. So what's great about Spreaker is that we can do live broadcasting, as we are doing. It's not a podcast. We have functionality from a different company that does our live phone calling piece of it, and it's integrated. But every time I go live, Climate Talk Radio goes live, if you sign up, you will know, like Climate Talk Radio is live. I think it says, Nancy Skinner is live on Spreaker. So you get that and like, oh, cool. You're at work, put your headset on, you're bored, and you can listen to all the fascinating stories, guests that we have, and my crazy theories that turn out to be right most of the time. And you get that information, but you should subscribe at our website just to be able to comment on posts, to be able to, we have a membership program where you could join for $5.99 a month, and you get different perks at different levels to help us keep this show going and actually grow this show, which is the plan, to grow it to a much bigger venue. But as we're working on all the kinks with it, but we're getting there. And so, Nancy, so basically, here's a storyline. The Trump, I was petrified by Donald Trump at one point. Okay, I was, and just nervous that so many Americans, I see these big Trump signs all over my hood, and it scares the heck out of me. And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, I know.
And so I'm past the point of being petrified, and now there was like a little bit of relief just because he's bombed out so much through this, and I'm gonna kind of go through the fall of Trump. But now I'm hearing conversation about, wow, this could be so bad that it could be so good. That it could be so good on the other side for us in the environmental movement. If this just keep coming, now that he's unshackled, that's what I'm saying, unshackled. So you were like shackled when you said that we got to build a wall because the Mexicans are rapists, and you were shackled when you called for a Muslim ban. Donald J. Trump, I'm calling for a ban on all Muslims in the United States until we figure out what the heck is going on with our country. You were shackled when you, called Rosie O'Donnell a pig and said to not Gretchen Carlson, Megyn Kelly, whose show I was on many, many times. She's very nice. Met her in person many times in the studio in Fox. The blood was coming out of her wherever. You were shackled when you, oh my goodness, where am I? When you said that you wouldn't release your taxes because you were under audit, but you were really lying because you wouldn't release your taxes because you knew how terrible it seemed to the working class people that you took a $1 billion loss, that you're not the businessman that you say you are. If you lose $1 billion on casinos during the highest growth period in the 90s that our country has ever seen while Bill Clinton was president, and you lose $1 billion and you were put on an allowance from the 70-some bankers that you owed $4 billion to, and your allowance was $450,000 a month just to keep up your lifestyle and your jet, and you screwed anything blonde that moved to New York, as your own people said, and the people that worked with him said he was mean and focused on their weight, constantly judging women by their weight. You were shackled during these campaign appearances where you attack Hillary as the devil and say you're going to arrest her. As soon as you become president, you're going to get the attorney general to get a special prosecutor. His rallies, they're all, lock her up. Lock her up. He's really gotten to the point of a dictator. You were shackled when you've been colluding with Vladimir Putin. Literally, your guy, as I was talking about, Carter Page, who is a named advisor, is a part of the Russian oil empire. And so no wonder, I'm sure they have Putin and he have, that's their contact. This guy, he works, he's Putin's pal. You are shackled, you made hundreds of millions of dollars in Russia, including with a leading mafia figure, a friend of Putin's, and you were shackled. When you talk about the crazy things you say, you'd bomb the hell out of ISIS, meaning their family members, and we should go after and kill their family members, kill innocent people. You were shackled when you said these things. You were shackled when you said, Russia hasn't gone into, invaded the Ukraine, when in fact they had annexed Crimea, and you're so stupid you don't know that, but you would get out and talk about it, and you were shackled that everything he says, and we have to go back and say, he didn't really mean what he just said. He meant some other crazy thing, and I could list this off endlessly. And now he says, thank God, I'm unshackled. It's like, okay. Holy
now
moly.
What's going to happen? Oh.
Let's brace for it.
Seems like he's been on our side. He's going to help Hillary.
There was a plot, and I don't believe that plot. That people thought that that's what he was doing all along. Some on the right, but I don't believe that because, having read as much as I have now about Donald Trump and his history, and if you saw those programs, The Essential Trump and The Essential Clinton on CNN, as I said, everyone should watch. He's psychotic. He is a narcissist. He suffers from a lot of mental disorders out there, and I've gotten some sound on that as well. But let's start with kind of the latest meltdown that might actually let us win if you all vote a clean sweep and actually get a decent climate policy, as we've talked about here. 100% neutral revenue neutral, meaning carbon tax, meaning we tax the oil companies and 100% of that tax goes back to you, taxpayers, goes back to you, us. We get to spend that money. Then what happens there is consumer spending is 80% of our gross domestic product. So we know how to spend our money, okay, better. And that really does, people, especially billionaires, don't really spend so much money. When you give them tax breaks, they already have everything. They don't spend it. It just goes to their kids, inherited down, and it's not spent. They don't need, more than 10 estates and planes and this and that. A middle-class person, a working-class person is going to go get a new car or fix a dishwasher or, buy groceries that they can't even afford sometimes. It's gotten so rough living on minimum wage, which needs to be increased, and that's the economic argument for that. But anyways, this is how all of this, my complaining about all the silliness of this election coverage, in retrospect, the Donald may have been the exact antidote we needed, and it all kind of really started coming down here.
No, she was in Palm Beach. I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it. I did try. She was married. Nancy. This was, and I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where there's some nice furniture. I took her out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there. And she was married. And all of a sudden, I see she's now got the big phony tits and everything. She's totally changed her look.
Your girl's hot as shit.
Whoa!
Yes!
Whoa!
Yes, that looks good! Whoa! Oh, my man! Wait, you gotta look at me to get out of here.
That is right. You are. You got it. Maybe it's a different one. Yeah, that's right, with the gold. I gotta use some TikTok just in case I start kissing her. I'm automatically attracted to people. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. I don't know your way. And when you start, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab by the pussy. Do anything. No, it looks good.
Come on, shorty.
Ooh, that's nice.
Get out of the way. That's too nice. Good.
It's always good if you don't fall out of the bus. Like Ford, Gerald Ford, you know?
Down below. Bullhead.
Hello, how are you? Hi. Nice seeing you. Terrific. You know Billy Bush?
Nice to see you. How are you doing?
Doing very well, thank Thank you. Are you ready to be a soap star?
We're ready. Let's go. Make me a soap star.
How about a little hug for the Donald? Just get up and
Okay, absolutely. Melania
So we haven't played that yet because I didn't have it, but I do know a couple of things that I haven't been discussed about that. I mean, I heard that coming out Friday. That was last Friday, and I was in coming out of actually Secretary of State's office to ensure that I was registered, and I heard that and I went, "Oh my God!" And everyone, the reports were like, "He's done. It's toast. That's bad." And then there was like this effort to push back. A couple things, Nance, in there that I haven't heard much discussion about. Billy Bush, well, he lost his job at NBC. He had just started hosting, I think, for a month as the third-hour anchor on the Today Show. And they're saying, you know, he was suspended, but now he's lost. It's gone. He's gone. And I think if he wouldn't have said that last thing, I mean, he was egging him on, but when he said, "How about a little hug for the Donald?" That was probably, you know, the icing on the cake for him. Do you not think? I mean, because he just had this gross conversation.
I think so, yes.
Not locker room conversation, which he said it was, and we're going to get to that. NFL people saying no, and we're offended. But had he not said that, and he just chuckled about Donald saying, "You could do anything. You can grab him by the pussy. You do it," and he would like just chuckled and said that the girl was hot. I don't think he probably would have lost his job over that. But how about a hug for the Donald? How about that's kind of encouraging him to go ballistic or whatnot. And then, okay, so there's that. There's the fact that he said, "Oh, I don't want to fall on a bus like Gerald Ford," and he knocks on the window, and it's like, okay, you are so out of it. Billy Bush had to say, "There's a handle down there. See, that's how you get out." Are you so privileged that, like, with drivers and stuff who just open your door, that you can't even open a door handle? You've never really gotten out of a bus and opened that door handle? And I thought, you know, it's possible since he's always had limousines. That's all you ever see him with in drivers. He's possibly never, they always come and open the door for you when you have a limousine. I used to, in my heyday on TV, when they weren't going broke, they always sent a limo for my TV appearances. And, you know, it would pull up and my neighbors would be like, "Where is she going?" All dressed up. Look, no, I am not a prostitute. I will be on Fox News. And so I have to look like this with blonde hair and teased all up big and this outfit on. And I will be back in about an hour, and you can watch me on TV. So that was weird, and that many people didn't talk about that he said that. So those were a couple of weird things. And then it got, you know, it just kind of went viral. Everyone was like, "Oh, my God, did you hear what he said?" You know, that you could specifically, and then there's been a big discussion. The New York Times actually uses the word pussy, grabbing pussy, because he said that word. So there was a big article in the media about whether they should censor themselves or not, because it was the words that he used. And then I think Anderson Cooper helped clear this up in his debate when he looked that up and found that action is technically considered legally sexual assault. And he posed that question. Donald, how's Donald going to handle it? How's he going to handle it? The debate. Oh my God. And it kind of threw everyone into a tizzy. Of course, right before that second debate, he held the impromptu press conference, leading reporters astray to try and throw it back at Bill Clinton, not Hillary Clinton, Bill, you know, as if women whose husbands have cheated on them are responsible. Okay, so again, if you didn't hear earlier, I said that Nate Silver of 538, who's the genius prognosticator of elections, showed a map of what it would look like if women refused to vote for Trump, which he is, I think his percent of his disapproval, something like his approval rating overall is only 29%. You cannot win an election like that. But his disapproval with women, and how far he's losing women, the female vote, is way beyond what Romney had to deal with or George W. Bush had to deal with. This is across the board. And he keeps going at it. He just keeps, oh yeah, if your husband cheats on you, you're the you're the enabler, and some of his surrogates were on there saying she facilitated this stuff. Oh yeah, let me call up people and see if I can hook you up tonight, Bill. Like women do that. It's so annoying to us as women. I don't think many of the men who are his surrogates are serving him at all. Even Chris Christie said to him, who's, except it's like Giuliani is the only person now like left defending every stupid thing he says. Even Chris Christie has said he should have come out and had a very sincere apology, and that's it. But when he gave his apology on the night it happened, when everyone was freaking out, like saying, whoa, this is a whole new level. He should have just really, and this is how pig-headed he is. He refuses to admit he's wrong, always, cannot do it. And his apology was half-ass, saying, I'm sorry if I offended. The first one, written one, was I'm sorry. It was locker room talk, and I'm sorry if anyone was offended. That's what he wrote. If anyone was offended. Then they were like, that's not good enough for the public. Nope. Got to do a video statement. The video statement was terrible. It was angry. It was him scowling, saying he may have said some foolish things, but Bill and Hillary Clinton have done worse things. And he went after it. It was really nasty. And we'll see you on Sunday. Okay. Really, you're just compound. You're digging, scoop, dig. Gets to the debate, and he's presumably had a time to sleep. Although we know he doesn't sleep much because he's up tweeting all night. He was in another tweet storm after Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, said he couldn't defend Donald Trump anymore. And as we talked about, everyone's on their own kind of. But he's up in the middle of the night tweeting. Another actress. Did you send that to me, Nancy? Some actress on a TV show said she was asked about cocaine, whether his sniffling was about cocaine, because they were doing all kinds of stuff, which I have, on body language and how bad his body language was at that debate, which again, through the lens, his supporters, like he redeemed himself. And through that debate, well, if you're a woman watching that, they actually had focus groups. He was looming over her, right behind her, like almost trying to intimidate her, scowling. And it was aggressive and hostile. And you're watching this as a woman, and you see this big oaf of a man standing as close as he possibly can to you, going side to side and scowling at you. She could probably smell his breath. I'm sure he didn't put any Tic Tacs on to molest Hillary. Didn't you see his body language during the whole thing and go, oh my God, did they not teach you that?
Yeah, it was scary.
At debate prep? It was scary.
It was scary. I mean,
I was tweeting. I think that the security are like ready to pounce on him because it looked like he was going to lose it at any second. And he's so filled with anger that it looked like he was just going to go after her because, he can't stand any criticism of him, never could throughout his career. He holds vendettas for the rest of his life against, as I talked about earlier, that one, he was not construction, but more of an architecture critic at the newspaper who said his third casino was a terrible decision. And Taj Mahal, because he was carnivalizing his own businesses. And it went bankrupt. It closed yesterday. He sold it off, but it, of course, did go bankrupt. He got away with tons of money, and everyone else got stiffed, all those contractors all those years. And now they're stiffed again. Okay, so someone else bought it, Icon, another billionaire bought it, and all those people have now lost their jobs again. But he can't let it go. So he would take out 20 years later, circled things about how good everything was going, and send it to this reporter who wrote one bad thing about him. I mean, this guy he holds grudges and he acts on them, and he's terrible. But anyways, Anderson Cooper asked him a question. He had all this time to prep and think about it, how he could get out of it. He heard the responses about how bad his apology was. He was given time to think and prep, and here's what he did.
Are you saying that what you said on that bus 11 years ago, that you did not actually kiss women without consent or grope women without consent?
I have great respect for women. Nobody has more respect for women than I do.
So for the record, you're saying you never did that?
Things that frankly, you hear these things are said, and I was embarrassed by it. But I have tremendous respect for women.
Have you ever done those things?
Have respect for me. And I will tell you, no, I have not.
Continue, Lonnie.
All right, so yes. No, I have not. Well, there's going to be more shoes to drop. Some reporting's coming out about some worse things that are coming out. Apprentice people are speaking out now because apparently during the taping of The Apprentice, the show, he used this language often. He was very crude, and some of the former Apprentice stars, including so many of them, had to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, for 5 years, and it's expired. But producers have come out and started talking about how he constantly judged women on their weight. And actually, I posted this on Facebook. I saw this. I'll try and find sound on it. But he fired a woman on The Apprentice. Did you see this, Nancy? For using locker room talk, he said. So she said during that episode that her episode, they were in the boardroom, that one of her male competitors actually broke into the women's locker room, which Trump bragged about as well in those tapes, how he could get away with with Billy Bush, walking into the Miss Universe pageant's locker rooms unannounced, where they had no clothes on, as the owner, just to check, make sure they're okay. And he's like, you could do that because you can get away. I walked in, they're naked, incredible, beautiful woman, just walking in on them. And so now this woman said on the show, The Apprentice, that so this competitor broke into the women's locker room and took, this is what she said on air during, this episode aired. So we have this, that he took a crap in their dressing room that left a stench that was horrible. And because she said that on the air at the end of the show, when he's doing his little gig, he said, that he thought what she said was gross. He didn't address that this guy walked in, broke into the women's locker room or entered it when he should not have. Apparently that's just fine. Or that act he did. But he said her saying the word crap was gross. He said, this is my boardroom. This is not a locker room, and you're fired. Can you believe that?
That sounds like the makings of a good Hillary commercial.
He fired a woman for saying crap after a man had broken into their locker room and actually taken a crap. There's more. They say that there's 8 more shoes to drop on this. That's why Paul Ryan and everybody are scrambling off the ship.
Crisis, unlike any we've seen in modern presidential politics, where you have the highest-ranking elected Republican in Washington breaking with the nominal standard bearer of his party, and the fear across Washington and across these congressional races around the country is that they actually haven't hit bottom yet. That I'm aware of one private poll for one of the parties that shows Trump losing by double digits, numerous polls from Senate races and governor's races across the country that show him tanking in the swing states. And someone referred kind of offhand to this mention Trump made at one of his rallies that maybe there are more videos still to come, and I would return fire if those videos got released. The fear, the petrifying fear among Republican members of Congress is that there are still 6 or 7 or 8 more shoes left to drop.
Corey, do you think? Do you think we're painting too dire a picture of what's going on in the RNC? Do you think Donald Trump did what he needed to do last night?
I thought Donald Trump was very good last night. I thought he tried to focus on the issues, is what I think. I think he talked about his difference of opinion on open borders versus pro-amnesty. I think Donald Trump was painting the picture of what his vision for America was, in contrast to Hillary Clinton. Very important. I think it's the right thing to do. Now,
yeah, he was all issues and substance and what he wants to do, but that they think there are more videos out there, and allegedly this is what's happening is Mark Burnett, who is partners with Trump on The Apprentice, which is owned by NBC, says he cannot release these tapes, all the stuff that they cut, the pre-cut, it's taped but it's edited out, that he constantly swore. He constantly had models, women spin around. He constantly talked about their breast size and their weight. And he was the gross guy we heard on the tapes. That's him. He said, anyone who knows me knows that this is not who I am. No, well, when you're hot mic'd and we hear you, and then everybody comes out of the woodwork. AP did a story extensively from of all the women who participated in The Apprentice, and there are men who have come out who said he's done it. And their USA Today had an article yesterday. I really didn't get the whole thing. There were some 20 existing sexual harassment lawsuits toward Donald Trump right now. There are so many existing lawsuits. When he said, he was asked if he if he did what he said he did by Anderson Cooper, and he said no. Well, that might not be true. One story alleges that was part of the footage that is. They're now raising funds on fundme.com to pay these people who have the footage to release this footage, because we need to know who this guy is. If we can't find out his tax returns, and if we can't find out what his behavior is, but he did use the N-word. That's what is being alleged in an article, and that's all on tape from an episode of while they're in between shots. They capture a lot of tape, and then we edit stuff. Your brother's a TV person, Nancy, and you know how much editing we do. But this is David Gergen. David Gergen, and who I know because we often in Boston we're on in the same we call them hot where we do our uplinks, our live shots at the same facility in Watertown, Massachusetts together for MSNBC. And so I got to know him. Really nice guy. He was an advisor to Nixon, Ford, Bush, and Clinton, 4 presidents, 1 Democrat, and a very thoughtful person on elections and American politics and history. Here's what David Gergen had to say.
It represents exactly who he is.
Because Bernie Sanders, between superdelegates and Deborah Wasserman Schultz, he never had a chance. And I was so surprised to see him sign on with the devil.
Okay, Donald, I know you're into big diversion tonight. Anything to avoid talking about your campaign and the way it's exploding and the way Republicans are leaving you.
Believe me, she has tremendous hate in her heart.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Joining now, CNN senior political analyst David Gergen, former advisor to Presidents Reagan, Ford, Clinton, and Nixon, and presidential historian and history professor Douglas Brinkley. David, for a candidate to say tremendous hate in your heart, the devil, I thought, when you said the devil thing, I thought back to, I think it was Hugo Chavez talking about George W. Bush on stage at the UN. Has there been rhetoric like this in a debate at this level?
I can't remember one in modern times. If you go back really in Republic's history, they were vitriolic. But they usually composed their differences before it was all over. And in this case, we're more and more polarized, more and more separated. And I must tell you, usually when commentators ask who won the debate, they like to retreat. The voters won. We had a great. Last night, the voters lost. It was an embarrassment for the country.
You really think so?
I absolutely think so. I can't tell you the number of people that told me today, I went to bed, I cringed. It was just like, there's so much mudslinging. It's really very tiresome now for people. And I think stressful for a lot of Americans.
Douglas, throughout history, have we seen anything quite like this kind of no-holds-barred style, or certainly modern history?
Not in modern history. The first presidential debate was in 1960. We haven't seen anything like that since it's been televised. And you would have to go back to the 19th century in the era of duels and caning of opponents and the like to see such a kind of crude, primitive behavior that Donald Trump exhibited. I mean, we're really looking at it. I think it was like an ugly nightmare last night for people, watching him prowl around the stage and berate Hillary Clinton, talking about a third-rate dictator, talking about I'm going to jail my opponent. It was embarrassing for him. However, not insignificant, Anderson. He was a wrecking ball of the Republican Party. He has decided to be the king of the alternative right. And he's not going to be the one that loses. Hillary Clinton might beat him, but it's the GOP that's going to lose because Trump's going to threaten in coming years to run a third-party movement, to be in future debates. All you need is that 15% bar to be qualified for the debate. The notion he's just going to resign and take it easy seems very unlikely.
Although he does, David, like winning, and so if does he really want to kind of be a perennial third party, assuming he doesn't win this time around?
I think he wants his brand to win, and he's in some danger of that going south as well. But let me just say, he was probably more on that stage last night. You were there as moderator. I don't know, it must have been very physical.
It was. I mean, I was reminded of. I mean, the only other people I've seen kind of wandering around like that. Al Gore did a bit of that. Certainly John McCain sort of famously did. Although John McCain seemed more kind of just walking around. Well, Donald Trump did a fair amount of that. Although others say he was sort of following her.
Yeah, he was like a lion in a cage to the viewer. I mean, this big bulky guy, and prowling. I think that's right. But I do think, in fairness to him, you have to say that he did hearten his own supporters last night. And there's a good chance he's going to get 50 million votes before this is all over. Probably got about 59. He's going to get somewhere in that vicinity.
And you could also make the argument that he came off in a better way than he did the first debate.
He was a better debater last night than he was. I don't think she was quite as commanding. I think he did come up short of what he needed to do. He was, I think he needed to win the debate. The CNN poll, and there's one of the poll out there will say that she won the debate. But I think what's distressing, Anderson, is to realize there are 50 million people out there who are really angry. And his base is something we haven't seen before in my memory. I don't know where that base goes. I think Doug's asking the right question. What happens if he loses to all those 50 million people? Where do they go in our politics, and what difference does that make?
Next debate 9 days away. Doug Brinkley, Dave Gergen, thanks very much. Just ahead, we're going to dig deeper on Donald Trump's claim that Hillary Clinton laughed at a 12-year-old victim in a rape case 40 years ago. You'll hear the tape for yourself.
Of course, that's Anderson Cooper on 360, Anderson 360. They did come back at a piece which has been totally, I debunked it here for you last week if you did not hear, completely debunked. She was the head of a legal aid clinic, forced to defend this man, and what she laughed about was she made him take a polygraph, and he passed it somehow. And she said her faith in polygraphs was forever destroyed because this guy passed it. Anyways, so what's weird is, okay, he comes back and they say he did himself some good with that second debate, which see I'm not seeing. I'm seeing this guy, marauding over Hillary Clinton. I can't even focus on what he's saying because he was just so tough, and she was trying to talk to individual voters. A Muslim woman came up and he said, "You Muslims." Okay, usually you shouldn't say you. You Muslims. He used to say the Muslims and the blacks all the time. Now he said, "You Muslims, we need your votes." But again, it's just sort of putting people in these categories. But amazingly, there are these women on TV who keep defending this guy. So some of it's just outright hilarious. And I was watching, I go back and forth between MSNBC, CNN, and Fox. So you should know when I'm watching, because I want to see all of the coverage and how they're handling it and their panels and whatnot. It's a little easier for me to record CNN. But the a former lieutenant general of New York State was on Nancy. I don't know if you saw this little bit or how much you're watching all this stuff as closely as I am. But here's her excuse as to why he was lashed out so much against everyone in the wake of the Access Hollywood tapes.
And they talked about taxes last night. He admitted in some way that he hadn't paid taxes in almost 20 years. But what do you say to him and his advisors who are saying it's okay to bring up Juanita Roberts, it's okay to bring up Paul Jones, it's okay to have them, when most of America, even staunch Trump supporters, are saying, what are you doing? What do you say to them?
I think his feelings were hurt. I'm just expressing my viewpoint here. I haven't talked to them about it. But I think his feelings were hurt that everybody, he said, I've been under assault for 48 hours from the media because of these things I said on a bus. Of course they were unforgivable, but they were so many years ago, and look what Bill Clinton did.
Can I just say his feelings were hurt? Yeah. Donald Trump, Mr. Big Bad Bully Billionaire from New York,
well, that's what I'm explaining. that's what I think is happening.
She has a good point.
Then he said that he got caught and that people were abandoning him. He had to be held accountable for his own actions, which he never takes responsibility.
On the temperament, I'll give Mark the last, but on the temperament thing, you're saying your feelings are hurt. If you're the leader of the free world and your feelings are hurt, don't you just say, I'm above the fray, I'm going to move on. Like when he asked Hillary Clinton about, when he brought up the affairs of the 90s, and Hillary Clinton just moved on and turned and pivoted right to policy. Isn't that what a leader should do? I'm not just saying Hillary Clinton. Instead of saying my feelings are hurt, and so I'm going to get you say, okay, fine, let's talk about my tax policy. Yeah.
He just couldn't.
I think we should give Betsy credit for telling what she thinks.
No, she's very honest.
But also it is putting aside all the liabilities and situations he has created for himself. That is a big liability for him. That's why a lot of people don't think he has the temperament to be the commander-in-chief because of things like that.
Hillary Clinton's tax plan was.
Okay, so she said his feelings were hurt. So that's why he decided, instead of just making a sincere apology and saying, maybe getting away with locker room talk or whatever, but say, I sincerely apologize to that. I have a daughter and whatnot. He had to parade these women from Bill Clinton's past in front of Hillary Clinton, wanting to put them in his VIP seats where his children would sit, right next to Bill and Chelsea Clinton, so that she would have to be looking at these women who allege things against her husband, and including the rape thing, which that young woman said years later she never held any ill will, that Hillary was appointed against her own volition. She tried to get out of it, but she was running a legal aid clinic and he wanted a woman. So she had to defend him and gave him the polygraph test thinking he would mess it up, but he passed it. And she laughed about how terrible polygraphs must be. So anyways, that woman would be there. But that's how vindictive he would be. Imagine anything with any world leader with these consequences of, the world leaders. Gosh, Barack Obama has had so many things said to him, and that's publicly. Imagine what's happening in diplomacy and on the red phone, and that he would just go ballistic. The whole nuclear code, that he can't handle anybody insulting him in any way. But for her to say his feelings were hurt was like, okay, this is not your job then. You're going to be the president of the United States. Right. You got to get over your feelings were hurt, so you're going to retaliate in a big way, okay? Because we do have these things called ICBMs, and we can't, nuclear codes, and wars can be started, and you got to be a little tougher than that, a little thicker skin. And that was another thing that I did. I posted on Facebook. Another incident a woman recalled from The Apprentice involved a lot of very foul language that was cut, but she was a country singer, Amanda West, and he kept stopping, going, I can't, look at how effing ugly your skin is. I can't even talk, or I can't even focus because your skin is so bad. And he was saying this, and like, he said, this woman needs some effing dermatology, serious effing and she appeared about that, and I'm like, look who's talking. Have you seen Donald Trump's skin in a close-up? The pores and the psoriasis and all the orange. What? The orange and he's
orange.
He's orange because he's in spray booths, but his pores are terrible and scarring, and he's really got some horrible, horrible skin. But for him to say that to her, and that's all he was obsessed about. So she couldn't advance because of that. He thought she didn't have good skin. Another contestant said that's dry makeup, okay? Because they put tons of cake makeup on you when you're on TV, and he wouldn't have any of it. But anyways, so this is some of the more fun stuff. Just sometimes this is Saturday night, and you sit back and you go, wow, I'm going to watch this because this is crazy. I've had enough serious stuff in my life. This is time at these late night panel discussions to just pour a glass of wine and kind of enjoy them. Ana Navarro she's a CNN commentator and a longtime Republican who dumped Trump very, very early on. because of his statements against Mexican and other things. And she's been a solid Republican for many years on CNN. And then it was Shelley Hughes. This woman, I can never remember her name because she's so crazy. Shelley Hughes, you know what I'm talking about. Nancy, Googled it. Shelley Hughes, whatever. She's on a lot as a Trump surrogate. But they got into this discussion.
Assault have come up to her in recent days. Do you agree that what he described doing on that tape is in fact sexual assault? As you know, the Department of Justice defines it as any unwanted sexual contact or behavior without explicit consent of the recipient.
Yes, if that's the action. But Mr. Trump has said time and time again that was not his action, that those were just his words.
So he was just bragging about sexual assault.
But that is not, but unfortunately, we have made that to be sort of a part of a culture, a 50 Shades of Grey culture in today's society, that men can talk like that. There was nobody on that bus, and as we've seen today, with someone actually losing their job or being suspended, nobody was asking about that.
Because where have we made it okay to talk like that?
80 million copies of 50 Shades of Grey was sold. And you can imagine Michael was one of the most popular movies
That was
ever
a
had.
consensual relationship. I didn't read the book, but I assume that was a consensual relationship.
No, it was not all the time, and the things that were done were not. When you look at the Vampire trilogy, unfortunately, it's become a very interesting pop culture itself has become very stretched in these areas. So this is just a part of it. If you read anything from Sports Illustrated to Playboys, sex unfortunately sells. However, you talk about the women that have walked away. Let me read you this quick note that I got from a mom that says, I don't expect a man to fight for me. I can fight for me. But I sure as heck don't expect a woman to stand up for me. And Hillary Clinton has stood against women, more women than she has stood up for. And I think that's why her message right now is not resonating. This is not about sexual assault. This is about one woman who has torn down the 4 women that were standing there in the booth yesterday, who has looked at a mom in the eye, has looked at several other Gold Star mothers and angel mothers whose children have been killed by illegal immigrants. That is what is affecting women today on Main Street. And Hillary Clinton, this type of language that she's doing, and I'm sorry, first I'd like to say thank you, Anna, because I think this is a teaching moment for the next generation, and I hope they watch this segment, and the women and young ladies can listen to this segment, because words aren't going to be used that if any man ever said against me, trust me, I would be extremely angry for him, but it even makes me more angry when another woman uses it to describe another woman.
Anna?
Yeah, it makes you angry except when the person who's running for president of the United States says it. And listen, let me tell you something. Everything you just said is 50 Shades of crazy. To compare running for president to an erotic film or an erotic movie, an erotic novel, is crazy. If he wants to be held to that standard, great. Then go write The Art of the Groping. But if you are running for president of the United States, you are a role model. You are a role model for children like your daughter who you keep quoting. You are a role model for all Americans. You are held to a higher standard. You should not be behaving like if you are in a locker room. You should be behaving like if you are in the Oval Office.
Anna, what were you doing 11 years ago? I find that, it's funny. On Friday, you saw the sanctimonious tirade. All of these never-Trumpers, left-wings, all of a sudden they were holier than thou. And now, 48 hours later, with the cursing and the pictures that are showing up to try to prove their point, it seems like they're in the biggest mud pack ever. What were you doing 11 years ago? Do you want to be held accountable for everything you were doing? And he apologized.
That's why I don't run for office.
God, he had never asked him for office.
That's why I am a private citizen, because I realized
and you were too at that time.
My life on a magnified glass. Now, I will tell you what. But you answer, what was he doing 11 days ago? He was tweeting at 3 a.m. in the morning, discussing tweets about Alicia Machado. So he has not been an angel playing the harp for the last 11 years. He has been lewd and crass the entire time.
Appreciate both of you being with us. We'll be right back. We'll have more ahead.
50 Shades of Crazy. I love it. I think that came right out of her, just the top of her head. And because I was listening to Scotty Nels Hughes, right? That's it. Say that that was Don Lemon. I love him. He's great. No, that was Anderson Cooper, wasn't it? Yeah, Don Lemon. I like both of those anchors really a lot. But to say, he asked, when is it acceptable to say things like that? And her answer was 50 Shades of Grey, because 80 million people, that would be in the world, read this book. That's your defense? 80 million people read 50 Shades of Grey. Pretty much women. I don't know many men that read the book. I read the book. Did you read 50 Shades of Grey, Nancy?
No comment.
You read the book.
You did? You read it?
I did, yeah. Of course I did. You did too, didn't you? Why are you afraid?
I glanced at it.
Oh, you didn't actually read it? You got it and you got bored?
I'm not running for office, so yeah, I did. Yeah.
What's wrong with that? It was a...
Did you read all of them?
No, I did not. I read the first one. I got the second one, I think, at airport one time, and I never picked it up again because I just wasn't interested. But there's a second film coming out. But it was, you know what? It actually was in the discussion about this. Women were reading this stuff. It was terrible writing, one, but you know, it was good. Sometimes you just want to like get lost in, a good book. I read to get to sleep at night. I have to read fiction because there's just too much going on in my head, and I read so much nonfiction. My library is so enormous. So my favorite authors are Nelson DeMille. Love his work, kind of thriller, spy stuff, or he's just got some great characters. And other books right now I'm reading, I always like kind of historical fiction that is suspenseful. I don't read a lot of Sandra Brown or romance. I think that 50 Shades would be the one I did, and it was because everyone was reading it. I think someone gave it to me for my birthday, so I was flying a lot and I read it. And it was, I'll tell you what, it was a consensual relationship. She was wrong on that. The girl in that movie who becomes so enthralled with this Christian, whatever his name was, who was like sadistic or was a master of BDSM or something. She got really into it, and she sort of found herself being very innocent and then getting really into this. I hear in later books like it turns and the whole she's not that I don't know. See, I didn't read all of it, so I don't know if any of it became non-consensual. I read the first one, and in the first one, it was consensual. Enough of 50 Shades of Grey. This is 50 Shades of Crazy was hilarious, her remark. And then, of course, Donald called it locker room talk at the debate. That's how he dismissed it. He just dismissed it as locker room talk. And so a lot of those folks who are actually in locker rooms, I was thinking when he said that, and they keep talking about locker room talk, and some people say that's how they talk. And he's said it, and I'm looking at him. He can't button his coat. Like, he's got the biggest sized jacket on that you could probably get at Men's Warehouse, and he can't button it. And I'm thinking, I don't think the last time this guy's been in a locker room in a gym or in any sports, I don't think I bet he pretty much has never been in a locker room. I mean, he's not exactly athletic. I don't see him like going to pick up hoops.
Did you see that statue that they put up? Was it in New York City?
All over.
Like a naked statue.
The paper mache naked Donald statues, kind of depicting where his fat would be.
With the big.
How could I not see it and vomit in my mouth a little
stomach.
bit? Vomited in my mouth.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God. And which when you see like him with Melania and all these women, Melania, by the way, has had something's wrong. Either she has a plastic surgeon who did a really, really bad job, and she has so much Botox, she is unable to lift the muscles on either side of her mouth up at all, or down. They're just, it's not a smile, it's not a frown.
Really?
Haven't you seen her? She's just never, like, panned to her during these debates. She's never smiling. Usually the spouses smile when they say something good. They have some emotion.
Yeah, you're right.
She has no emotion,
Serious.
never
Always,
emotion.
seriously.
It's just like, you can see her eyes looking at him going, oh my God, don't say that. Oh my God, don't say it. But her mouth cannot move. So I think that has to be a Botox related injury. A malpractice suit maybe is in order. But so they talk to some athletes, and they say athletes and coaches to Donald Trump, sexual assault is not locker room talk. Trump, all right, he used locker room banter. Let's see. That caused a lot of high profile. I'm reading an article from U.S. News and World Report. Caused a whole lot of GOP defections. So some high profile athletes have come out. Consensus of opinion appears to be reflected in a statement Los Angeles Clippers head coach Doc Rivers made to TMZ. He said, "That's a new locker room for me." Meanwhile, some stars seized on the comments from the Trump to mock him. Clippers forward Blake Griffin riffed on his period off period heavy breathing as locker room-esque. His heavy breathing. Maybe it's which some actors said yes. He's definitely on cocaine. Well, you sent me the link. You should know the name. They said that was more the heavy breathing because they're probably out of breath because they've actually been exercising and running around the field and off the courts and off the football field. And UFC with mixed martial arts, which is a grueling, horrible sport, actually, if you ask me, where they just go after each other. But artist CM Punk called the locker room statement more of a Ted Bundy quote than illustrative of what men actually say behind closed doors. And like, have you seen UFC boxing? It's like crazy. They just can knock and punch, and there's blood. They're bleeding all over. There's blood all over the floor. And have you ever watched UFC, the martial arts, Nancy?
You know, only because my husband puts that kind of stuff on, and I'm like, why would I want to watch people beat each other up?
It's just disgusting.
I'm not into that.
I know. I had a boyfriend
but I have watched it.
who was into it, so I did have to watch it, like show up at bars for some special match, and I'm like, okay, this isn't working for me. That relationship did not last. This is more of a Ted Bundy quote. So the National Sexual Violence Resource Center said they're very concerned about this, and they said there's nothing comical about Trump's attempt to deflect the controversy. Recent comments by Donald Trump illustrate what needs to change across our culture in order to end sexual assault.
Back in the good old days, things were just...
And I don't know what that's about or how that got played. Those comments illustrate what needs to change across our culture in order to end sexual assault and create a society of respect, safety, and equality. Locker room talk is not an excuse for unacceptable behavior. It goes on and on and on. Okay, this is what I was pointing to. Despite claiming that no one respects women more than him, he said that at the debate. If you didn't catch that, when he was asked by Anderson Cooper, I think let's play her again. Not only did he say, oh, might not have it now. No, I know. But not only did he say it was locker room talk, in the same sentence, he said, nobody, I mean, everything to him, and there's a word for this in editing, but everything to him has to be, nobody respects women more than me, or his is the greatest, or the best, or there's never been anything as good. And nothing ever can be better or worse than he's saying, like, Hillary is the devil. Okay, she's literally is the devil. She was Satan. You guys don't actually realize this, but she was incarnated as Satan. And I mean, it's like his extreme language in either direction. I wouldn't say that, nobody has more respect for women in the wake of all of this. To use that hyperbole. I mean, hyperbole is one word. It's worse than that. Trying to find it. Anyways, he said it.
I heard he has the vocabulary of a third grader.
He does. Yeah, I saw that discussion as well. There was someone who analyzes political discourse and language, and they were on talking about most elections, the candidates speak in terms of
7th or 8th grade language. That's really the level at which political discourse is held in this country. But he analyzed Donald Trump's language because of these things he says and how he repeats words over and over. It's fabulous, very, very just. And he speaks on a 3rd grade level. I mean, this was a analyst. This was an academic who said that's how he speaks on a 3rd grade level. It's English. Despite saying no one has more respect for women than Trump, in answer to that question, he's been accused of mistreating women in at least 20 lawsuits, according to USA Today. So 20 lawsuits they have spelled out against him. And it's sort of interesting because he was back on Hardball back in 1981. It was 1998. And he was asked about running for president. And here's his response.
For decades, Donald Trump has flaunted his life with beautiful women. In fact, he himself predicted his history with women could be a problem if he ran for office. Chris Matthews asked him about it in 1998.
Can you imagine how controversial that'd be? You think about him with the women. How about me with the women? Can you imagine?
The him Trump is referring to is Bill Clinton. Although last night he made a point of saying his own bad behavior paled against Clinton's.
If you look at Bill Clinton, far worse, minor words, and his was action.
So lots of athletes weighing in on that. There's a Twitter feed with all kinds of athletes stepping up saying, no, we don't. We really don't. One guy said, we talk about women, like men talk about women, but we don't talk about them in that regard. We don't talk about them assaulting them and what we do to them. We talk about who's hot and who we like and stuff, but that's a whole different ballgame. So there is a movement. I told you about this, Nancy, because I want to get to before the end of the program. Al Gore on the trail, yay! But to wind up this discussion of the Trump crumbling train here, there's now a movement. It started out as hashtag not okay, and a woman asked for women who have been grabbed by the pussy, to be frank, to write their stories on that trending feed, the Twitter feed, not okay, which turned into a Twitter feed called, Pussies Fight Back. So they got so many stories from girls, women all over who talk about, I was 12 years old and my gym teacher groped me. I didn't tell anybody. So many, thousands and thousands of stories that they calculated that it was every 4 seconds a tweet came out where a woman told a story about being inappropriately groped and, that they were young usually or in office situations, and that it's so widespread. It was every 4 seconds just from putting that out there. So this whole pussy grabs back movement has grown into a huge fight, why I'm talking about women perhaps changing the face of this election if they just get so mad at all of this and all of our lack of equal pay and mistreatment and lack of concern about the issues that women do care about the environment more because we are caretakers. I'm not saying more because there's so many men involved in the climate movement. I'm just saying there probably are more women who are sympathetic to environmental issues because they're mothers and caregivers. And it's just part of it. They worry about their kids' environment, but just heaping on the sexist attitudes that he has and the constant judging of women as objects and their weight and this obsession. Women just can't stand this guy. So this was the discussion about pussies, hashtag pussies fight back.
These women, some of them had issues with it, some of them didn't have issues at all, but they're not changing their votes.
Well, it says a lot. One, it says that I definitely live in a bubble. And the bubble that I live in is one where sexual assault and rape culture is not okay. And that's a bubble that I never want to climb out of. I never want to get to a point where someone's words about harmful and offensive touching and groping are okay. They're not okay. And one of the things that I wanted to do was read quickly just what the definition of sexual assault is, because he denied any type of sexual assault when Anderson asked him about it at the debate last night. Sexual assault is any type of sexual contact or behavior that occurs without the explicit consent of the recipient. Falling under the definition of sexual assault are sexual activities as forced sexual intercourse, forcible sodomy, child molestation, incest, fondling, and attempted rape. And fondling is clear. If you're grabbing people, I'm not going to say it, if you're grabbing people in their private areas, that is fondling. That is sexual assault.
Right, he's done none of those things, Angela.
He has.
It's just so ironic. The selective, Clinton's
No, I'm sorry. Newsom was not running for office.
The selective outrage that the left is okay with Hillary Clinton, who put private investigators on people who had viable sexual assault claims. It's selective outrage. And you know what? People see through it because that same NBC poll that was taken before the debate, before the apology, guess what it shows? 60%. You do not think that this video is disqualifying or have no opinion of it. That's 60%.
And that's what I'm talking about.
He apologized, and most Americans believe in forgiveness.
No, most Americans don't believe that it was.
Actually,
So just really quickly, I know that you all have a road that you have to stay on, but it's also not honest.
We don't have to stay on it.
Well, you're staying on it. The fact of the matter is, Bill Clinton is not running for president of the United States. I'm not going to let you all continue to say that she allowed him. She took him away. No, she didn't. How did she facilitate what she was? No. Because it's not that. That's rape culture. Katie, you're blaming someone who succumbed to it. Someone committing adultery on her. We're Christians, but let's talk about what that is.
She was accused of facilitating it last night, and she was definitely
wrong.
She did not deny it.
But you know why? Because it's effing ridiculous. That's so ridiculous. That's crazy. I can't believe you. I really can't. Meanwhile, Roger Stone is paying $2,500 of another victim, and that's what you all are going to be proud of? Victims? Give me a break.
It's just getting really ugly. It's just getting really. This is CNN. I mean, which prides itself on being the kind of middle of the road, I guess, network or whatever, the state news network. And these kind of discussions in heated language is happening about Donald Trump's remarks. More shoes will drop. And that's why Donald Trump was dropped from consideration by Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, who says, you're on your own, defend your own races. And as a result there, we have, people are, Donald Trump then went on a tirade last night in the middle of the night all about Paul Ryan. He's mad at the party, mad at Paul Ryan. They're talking about that he will lose and there will be a third party. Heard that conversation from a Republican that there's going to be a Democratic Party, a Republican Party, and the Trump Party. And it's going to be like the Trump Party is comprised of some of both. And this disconcerted third movement, third party movements kind of combined, which there's a lot of weird positions that you'd have to put together to be have a Trump Party. That could ever reach any sort of majority vote or get anywhere, but it's the election that it just gets worse and worse and weirder and weirder, worser and worser. Sometimes funnier when you need it to be.
That's right.
Because it's definitely comic relief. But I saw something I loved to see. So happy. I turned the TV on and saw Al Gore in Florida campaigning with Hillary Clinton, telling millennials that they really had to vote because of climate change. How many times have I said this on the show since our existence? A lot. Coming up, we'll hear Al Gore on Hitting the Trails talking about just how much every vote counts and why it counts. This is Climate Talk Radio, and I'm Nancy Skinner.
Okay, this is Climate Talk Radio, 734-333-9020. Welcome to the program. We're finally getting around to, gosh, you miss a day and you miss so much in this campaign. I'm Nancy Skinner, your host, and my point in the show was that the downfall of the Donald may help us win in a landslide. Those of us who care about climate change and climate policy, which means we really, really could use the House, the Senate, and the White House on board and cooperative, and not 4 more years of gridlock doing nothing about the climate because we just cannot afford it. So, I'm amplifying the stupid and sexist and racist and outrageous things that Donald has said and done because come at it. That's him. That's the Donald, and he's done it, and he may help us actually in some strange way win the White House and get the White House back. So that's why we're kind of getting to where we are. But what we saw on the campaign was that Al Gore joined Hillary Clinton on the stump in Florida, the all-important state, Florida, and they were talking about millennials, many of whom do not remember the Bush v. Gore election that I was on the air throughout, and it was such a horrible time because the Supreme Court of the United States stopped the counting of votes. Gore lost the election by some 530 votes. Ralph Nader took 90,000 votes in Florida. So all you Gary Johnson people, don't do that. And commentators were talking about how different this country would have been. And Gore, of course, it was the first to bring climate change into the national consciousness, really, with his book Earth in the Balance, which inspired my career to work in sustainable development back in 1992. And I think I've been saying, wake up, millennials. Why aren't you focusing on climate change? They haven't been asking the question. And so finally, Al Gore, I guess, put aside any existing hostilities he had with Bill Clinton because he felt that when he was running for president, he had to deal with the mess of Monica Lewinsky, and that he kind of distanced himself, but he felt it important enough and has supported Hillary enough that he absolutely needed to have his message heard on climate change.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Secretary Clinton, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the warm welcome. I appreciate those kind words very much. I want to acknowledge all of the elected officials and distinguished guests who are here, and I want to say a special word of thanks to President Eduardo Padron and Miami-Dade College. I understand you've got a pretty good women's volleyball team here, so go Lady Sharks, is that what you say? I'm here today with 2 very simple messages. Number 1, when it comes to the most urgent issue facing our country and the world, the choice in this election is extremely clear. Hillary Clinton will make solving the climate crisis a top national priority. Very important. Her opponent, based on the ideas that he has presented, would take us toward a climate catastrophe. So that's my first message. The climate crisis is and must be regarded as a top national priority and a top global priority. Here's my second message. Your vote really, really, really counts. A lot. You can consider me as an Exhibit A of that truth. Now, for those of you who are younger than 25, you might not remember the election of 2000 and what happened here in Florida and across the country. For those of you older than 25, I heard you murmuring just now, but take it from me, it was a very close election. Elections, well, here's my point. I don't want you to be in a position years from now where you welcome Hillary Clinton and say, actually, you did win. It just wasn't close enough to make sure that all the votes were counted or whatever. Elections have consequences. Your vote counts. Your vote has consequences.
And boy, was I in the middle of that one. I remember so clearly that race because I was on WLS radio at the time and doing daily television appearances on MSNBC. And I was already in the chair, as they say. That's when you have your makeup on and all the earpiece in and our IFB and whatnot. They tested your audio. You're ready to go on in any second, right? And you're prepped. And I think it was in Chicago. And the announcer came on with breaking news and said, well, he said, hold up. And it was that the Supreme Court has stepped in and they've decided to stop the Florida Supreme Court from doing a recount. They stopped the counting of votes. And I was just in shock because it's the state that has state election laws or state election laws. There are no federal election laws except for voting rights and kind of those laws, but not how to conduct elections and what shall be done. None of that exists. And so, and even in the opinion that they wrote where they said this is unprecedented and it can't ever be used again. This opinion that we're using now cannot be used for future precedent. Well, that defies the existence of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court exists to look at lower court rulings, decide which one's correct, and create that as all future precedent. It's the end of the story. So that's exactly what they're supposed to do. There is no loophole. You can't say we're just going to this one time do this. That undermines having a Supreme Court. They're just not another finder of fact, okay? They're just not another appeals court. Whatever they say is what is supposed to stand. And so I actually was published in an op-ed. I wrote an op-ed that night and submitted it to the Chicago Tribune, and it was entitled, Can't See the Forest Through the Trees is what the title they put on it. The newspaper usually titles your op-ed, but it was big. It took up almost the entire op-ed page in the Chicago Tribune, big paper. But it really was, I had titled it, this is the worst black mark on the Supreme Court since, and I think it was Plessy Ferguson decision, where African Americans were considered chattel or property, and it would go down in history as such. And just to think about, I was so upset to think about the oil guy versus the climate change guy, okay, in an election, and how much impact that would have back in 2000, so 16 years later. When they're saying, what were you doing 11 years ago? I don't know, and I'm not ready for, you know what I was doing 11 years ago? I was running for Congress in my second election in the 9th Congressional District of Michigan on climate change, getting up every single day and spending every single waking hour 7 days a week, going out and speaking to constituents and groups and talking about climate change and running a campaign and raising money and raising awareness. So, yeah, I know what I was doing 11 years ago. And so, I mean, they all act like, oh gosh, we all were terrible. And a lot of people, Al Gore has his whole career been doing this and has gotten so much backlash from so many people. The people that hate Al Gore, they named it Al Gore warming. This is such a hoax. He never said he created the internet. I was watching a Fox panel. Again, so much was taken out of context during that campaign. Granted, he wasn't as smooth as an orator as he is now and as he was in the movie Inconvenient Truth. He's much more comfortable doing those live presentations. He's really very funny. I was trained to be a climate reality leader following my loss in my third election in September of 2014 in the primary that we talked about the other day that was just very close. If I only had a few more dollars, my pollster said not even close, I would have won. But after that election, that was in August, so I only had a day or so to kind of turn my head around, and I led a bus of young people to the People's Climate March and on September 22nd, and get that bus loaded up and all those young people down to New York City for that march. And then as soon as I got home from that, I was selected to be a climate reality leader where they have these training sessions with Al Gore. And I had to travel, fund myself, get your own funding. So if you want to go into the climate change business, don't plan on getting rich. At this point, renewable technologies, yeah, sure, that's great business. So I flew myself down to Rio de Janeiro, grueling trip. Had to go from Detroit to Toronto to Sao Paulo, which is a massive airport. It takes an hour to walk across this. And I had all my filming equipment because I was filming the event as well, and radio equipment to do interviews with members of the Climate Reality Project. And they come from all over the world when they hold these training sessions. So it's just so diverse. And then ultimately to Rio, where we were personally trained by Al Gore over the course of it's like 3 days, but 2 full days of Al Gore training us to deliver his slide presentation from The Inconvenient Truth. And it was really cool, Nancy. You would have loved it because how he does this is he says, okay, first of all, I'm going to go through and I'm going to give the whole presentation. So, it's a slide presentation, and now I'm a certified climate reality leader. We have access to his portal through the Climate Reality Project. You can go to their website, climaterealityproject.com, I believe it is. And you can go to one of these trainings. You have to apply. It's not just something they accept anyone. You have to have some real experience that lends you to be, experience in the real world that would help you become a climate reality leader. And I think having run for Congress 3 times on climate change qualified me, certainly. But I was accepted, and he spends 2 days. So he says, I'm going to run through the entire presentation like you saw in Inconvenient Truth, but it's been so much more updated now because he talks about renewable energies and how the prices have drastically fallen 80%, and it includes much more because that film was done in 92 or something, or you saw it, Nancy. When was the Inconvenient Truth, the movie came out?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
I'd have to look it up. It's been like over 10 years, I think.
Yeah.
2006, 5?
Something like that. So since that, when he wrote the book, I mean, so much the hopeful end of the story was incorporated into his presentation. But there's something like 2,000 slides that we now have access to, and you could curtail your presentation to different audiences depending on who you're talking to. And how he did it. So he went through the whole presentation, how he would do it, and then he said, "I'm going to break it down." And then into sections, and we'll go into scientific detail. His chief scientific officer actually is a professor at U of M, who I had met on the campaign, by the way, and Dr. Henry Pollack. He's a professor at University of Michigan. He's goes around to these trainings that they do to like 2 or 3 a year in different parts of the world, and he's the chief scientific advisor. But they have a number of scientists who break it down, kind of teach you about that particular area, and then Gore teaches you about the presentation of that material, and he was so funny. I mean, just recounting his loss, and he's always, what did they say, that he's the most known as the guy who the next president. It's some joke about being the next president of the United States. It's just really funny and warm, and then he's. The air conditioning broke, okay? We're in Rio, and it was not a picnic because we got attacked. The hotel it wasn't like attacking him per se, but was drug dealers, and so there was a battle on the hill behind the hotel where we were, and local officials on the ground, the military got involved, the militia, and they were using missiles, firing missiles behind our hotel. There's ground to air missiles fighting between the police force and these, whatever you call drug runners or whatnot in Rio. Okay, so we got evacuated at one point, and then they let us back in. This was on day one. And I ran into Professor Pollack. We'll have to have him on the show. I had all my equipment. I traveled down there. I was like, oh, I'm so much pain. I walk into the lobby of this hotel, and who's there? I had met him on my campaign, and he supported me in Plymouth, Michigan. Henry Pollack, and the hotel was beautiful, but it was just the two of us. And we're walking in, and I said, Professor, what are you doing here? He's like, Nancy, what are you doing here? I go, well, I was selected as one of the climate reality leaders. He said, well, I'm the chief scientific officer. So we had dinner with another group of people that night, and it was okay. The incident was resolved, but no picnic to be having this kind of fight. It was all over the local news, blah, 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 behind you. Then the next day, the air conditioning broke. Okay, so it's so hot in this auditorium. And Gore kept going. I mean, he broke through each section, and he was sweating. Everyone was sweating. It was horrible. But his dedication and his passion and his knowledge, his scientific knowledge, after doing this for so many years and working with so many scientists, is so astounding. But you put the whole thing together, and his presentation, it was like blew me away. Like everybody in the room, after he finished his first run, where he just does it with humor, with pictures, with the emotional grasp of this, what will happen if we don't act, and the whole roller coaster of emotions, and his humor and his presentation style is so smooth, and his scientific knowledge was spot on. His delivery was so excellent. It was a performance that everybody just sat back like almost stunned at the end of it and cheered wildly because
How many people were there?
I think there were about 400 people in that auditorium. And they just cheered. It was just like the most amazing thing to see him do such a good job. And that Al Gore would have won easily. That Al Gore would have decimated George W. Bush because of how good he was. And it was such an honor to like be there. I was in the first row. So because I had the media equipment, I was both a leader, going through the training, but I was also part of the media press corps. So I got to go back and interview everybody and whatnot. Had all my press credentials for that too. So I got a front row seat to the best presentation you have ever seen. I interviewed Ken Berlin, who runs the Climate Reality Project, and some of the other leaders. I didn't get a chance to interview Al Gore because after it was done, they got him the heck out of there because of this terrorist kind of air to missile ground fire thing that was going on between us. Like while we were there.
They didn't get you out of there.
No, I had to slog home. I had to sleep. Oh, I remember, it was so horrible. Just because of the flight I got, to get a cheap flight, I ended up having to sleep. I remember I think this was in Toronto's airport, maybe for like 5 hours with my bags and all my camera equipment on chairs. They don't even have benches. And I came home with my feet hurt, my back hurt. I was tired. I'd just gone through an election. The People's Climate Bus, which was just exhausting. That was a 12-hour ride and traffic and organizing that. And then as soon as I got home, I had to fly or do this whole Rio thing. So I had a rough year that time. And that's actually when I conceived of Climate Talk Radio before I went down there. This was in 2014. Had all this printed up. I had all these flyers about how I was going to start this radio show, and everyone thought it was an excellent idea, and they said, go for it. So worked on it since that point, and here we are. So Al Gore whose book inspired my entire career, Earth in the Balance, because I read it back in 92 or 93, and that's why I got into this field. And he did present an award to me when I helped rebuild those flood communities. So obviously I'm a big fan of Al Gore, and it was great to see him out on the campaign trail talking to millennials about how important this issue is. And not only that, but how every vote does count, because how many he lost by and how different our future would have been. We wouldn't have gone to the war in Iraq. We wouldn't have had that fight over oil, which means then we would not have had ISIS. We would have not had ISIS. We would have not had, Al-Qaeda. None of these problems in the Middle East would have happened. There would have been other situations, I'm sure. I'm not saying everything would be perfect, but he would have moved us. He tried to do cap and trade as vice president in the Clinton administration, and that got shot down by the Congress. But he would have moved us as president toward a renewable energy economy starting in 2000. We would be way ahead of the curve. We would not be facing as he says, the climate crisis, the emergency that it is right now, had everybody registered to vote and voted, and that every vote, had it been counted, I believe, because he did win the popular vote. He lost the electoral vote only because of Florida, and it was only because of the Supreme Court, because Antonin Scalia stepped in and said, we're going to do something we are not supposed to do. And in their statement that they wrote, their opinion, they said, we do not want to cast a pall on or shadow on a Bush presidency. That's why we're stopping the counting of votes. Well, what do you mean the Bush presidency? It was an automatic recount because within a certain margin, if it's that close, the state law required a recount. That's their election law. Had been passed, okay? Part of their law, part of their constitution. State court went to Florida Supreme Court, and they said, yep, absolutely. And the vote began. And the thugs, the Republicans pulled up the biggest thugs they could, and like as each election officials, they were doing their recounts. And remember the hanging chads? They're doing a manual count and trying to figure out if this chad, because it had to be completely punched through the paper, and some of them were hanging, and whether they had to go to court and see if it's still hanging. But clearly, the intent was a Gore vote because that's the only hanging Chad, and courts were ruling depending on whether they wanted Bush or Gore. Oh no, that doesn't count unless it's completely pushed through and there's no hanging Chad. I mean, it was insane, the ruling in county by county in Miami-Dade County, and there were protests going on, and these thugs were pounding on the doors. They sent thugs. It all came out to pound on the doors where the recounts were taking place to stop them from counting the votes. Literally throwing chairs against the walls. You could see trying to break down the centers where they were recounting votes as ordered by their Florida State Supreme Court. The law of the land that should have prevailed. And and the stakes were so high, and we now know who those thugs were. It all got reported on, but that is why they sent those thugs to create the violence, to inject some sort of concern about American democracy and the fairness. And we're seeing it with Trump. He's saying this is rigged. He was in Pennsylvania he's saying this election is rigged. They're rigging the election. He's trying to create that same uncertainty that he did with President Obama being born in Kenya. Therefore, this is not an official presidency, undermining him. He's already starting to pave the way for a Clinton presidency being another illegitimate presidency, so he can create a cottage industry where he is the force of the angry, the people that think it's okay that he says and does what he does, the people that hate Hillary and want her locked up in jail. And right now, all he is doing is trying to. He understands he's going to lose this election. That's why he's going after Paul Ryan. That's why he's ripping them in the middle of the night. That's why he's saying, lock her up at these rallies. He wants to lead this movement, and he wants to lead it because he knows he will make a lot of money doing that and being the leader of the hate group in America. He wants to be the de facto head of hate in America. And that's why he's saying this election is rigged and undermining the confidence and using his Russian contacts to undermine the confidence in the American election. And he is doing this. And we've already been through this with Bush v. Gore. Gore should have been the president of the United States. That they did recounts after newspapers got a hold of the ballots after the counting had stopped and did their own recounts by FOIA requests. And Gore did win the election, which is why people were chanting, "You won, you won, you won." And having suffered that terrible an injustice, he went on to do these slide presentations and to do that movie Inconvenient Truth and just go all over the world with his slide presentations and sort of raised the entire world's consciousness about this issue, and is the person that did get a Nobel Peace Prize and deserves much more and should have been the president. So when he said to voters at that rally in Florida, not only is it about the climate, but it is, I don't want to have to come back and have Hillary speak and you say, you did win, because she lost, because you didn't register to vote, or you didn't do early voting, because they can do early voting in Florida, or get your absentee ballot, because it came down to a few hundred votes. And that message to me was so powerful on so many levels, and the disparity between what he did and how gracefully he acted and how he turned his life around and what he's done for this and for the future versus what Trump is trying to do to destroy the confidence in the American electorate and tear us one against each other, and in the process ruin our climate and carry on a movement of hate, and that road, a cottage industry of hate where he will get very, very rich and this country will lose. So thank you, Mr. Gore, for getting back out on the campaign trail, reaching out to all Americans about the importance of climate change as we are getting past the biggest hurdle. And amen, Donald Trump might in some very convoluted way be a gift from God. She said, okay, how can we win? How can we possibly win this thing? Let me think. Pretty tough. They got all the money. They got Citizens United, planets in jeopardy. I know. I'll get Donald Trump to want to be president. I'll get him to run. I'll get in his head about power, and maybe I always joke about God being a she. I don't think God is a he or she. I think there is God and a universal force, and whatever God is, who he or she is, cares about this planet very deeply, and it is our responsibility to protect it. And Al Gore certainly has done it. So I don't think anything's going to get weirder and weirder before it gets better, folks. So stay tuned. Another day, another development on Climate Talk Radio. And again, be sure to register, subscribe to Spreaker.com so you know when we're live, and as well to our website so that you can get all the information, information. We got good guests coming up. We want you to hear them. So there's just too much to not be a part of the program.